What if Harry Potter came to Forks before the Volturi arrived? Not as a student, not as a hero, but as a tired wizard looking for peace. The Cullens sensed something wrong immediately. Edward cannot read his mind. Alice cannot see his future. And Carlisle knows the name Evans is hiding something much bigger. But when the Volturi turn their eyes toward Forks, Harry Potter may become the one ally the Cullens never knew they needed. Hey guys, welcome to the Vempire, Harry. Subscribe if you are new here. Also, if you love the Harry Potter, Twilight fictions, what ifs, theories, and lore, please make sure to share this video as much as you can. Also, if you have any story suggestions and any form of queries, please write below on comment section. Now, let's start.
The rain in Forks did not fall so much as accumulate, settling into the shoulders of coats, into the fibers of road signs, into the gray moss that gave the forest its permanent softness. It was the kind of rain that tired a town without ever seeming to do anything at all, and it was the rain that greeted Harry Potter when he stepped off the early bus at the boarded-up lot that passed for a station. He shouldered his single battered pack and looked, for a long moment, at the sky. His eyes were green as any sea he had crossed, but something in them had gone still. A stranger might have called that stillness calm. Those who knew better would have called it a resting kind of grief. He had spent 2 years deciding whether to come somewhere like this, and 2 more getting here. A small sign across the road, hand-painted, said Forks Diner. He crossed the wet pavement without hurry and stepped inside, bell tinkling above his head, the smell of bacon and coffee and old vinyl cushions rising to meet him. The woman behind the counter was in her 50s, kind-faced in the way of people who had seen enough not to be surprised, and she gave him a plate of eggs and hash browns without asking what he wanted. He paid in American cash he had exchanged at the last big airport. The coffee, when he tasted it, was not good. He drank it all the same. He sat by the window and let his senses open, an old habit from old wars. The diner held 2 loggers finishing their shift, a waitress reading a paperback, a teenage boy drawing on the placemats, and a girl his own age or thereabouts, though he knew better than to trust the look of any age these days. She had dark hair, pale skin, and a way of holding her coffee cup in 2 hands as if she were not entirely sure yet what her hands were for. She was watching him. Harry Potter had long ago accepted that he would be looked at. In another life he had been looked at for his scar, and later for surviving, and later still for being the thing that had walked out of the Forbidden Forest after Voldemort's second death, the thing that was the same young man as before and, in some deep and unlabeled way, not the same at all. He had learned to tolerate the looking. The girl did not look as if she recognized him. She looked as if she had caught in his stillness some answering note to her own. He inclined his head, a small courtesy, and went back to his eggs. The door chimed again. He felt the new arrival before he turned, a change in pressure at the nape of his neck. There are old reflexes, honed on battlefields, that tell a wizard when a predator enters a room. Harry did not turn. He watched the reflection in the window instead. The young man who had come in was tall, pale, bronze-haired, handsome in a way that made the air around him feel, somehow, arranged. He wore a dark coat that was not quite dry. He moved to the girl with the kind of grace that was not decorative but functional, the way a heron moves, the way a shark moves. His topaz eyes flickered once to Harry in the window glass and held, not human. Not, in the ordinary sense, alive. Harry exhaled slowly. He had seen vampires before. He had fought vampires before. He had also, once in a market in Bucharest, shared a meal with one, but that is a longer story. This one was something other than the red-eyed vagrants he had known, and his eyes, instead of the crimson that said human blood, were a warm amber gold. He fed on animals then. It was a relief, though Harry would not have said so aloud. "Bella," the bronze-haired man said, and the voice carried in the small space without being raised. "I thought I'd meet you here." "You are early," the girl said, pleased. "I was going to surprise you, I think," said the man, his gaze flicking with the barest concession of courtesy toward Harry, "that I've been preempted." The girl, Bella, colored. "Oh, sorry, we haven't actually. I mean, he's just eating." Very observant. The man said dryly, and in that dryness Harry heard something that almost made him smile. The creature was not enjoying himself. He was worried. He was worried, Harry suspected, because he could not hear what the young man in the window seat was thinking. Harry turned then a little and met the topaz eyes directly. He allowed his mouth to move very slightly at one corner. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," the creature answered, polite as a headmaster. He extended a hand neither too fast nor too slow. "Edward Cullen." Harry did not take the hand. He considered it, saw in his own mind the flash of a touch and what it might cost, not for him, who had been close to legilimency since he was 19, but for the creature, who might find the absence unsettling, and let his own hand rest on the table instead. "Harry," he said. Evans, the surname came easily. It had been his mother's once, and he felt was the safer one now. Old habits. "Evans," Edward repeated, and there was a small and almost imperceptible hesitation before the word. Harry saw him filing the name, turning it, finding it unplaceable. "Good, you're new," Bella said, a little too eagerly as though she wanted to be helpful. "We don't get many new people, I imagine not." "Where from?" "Everywhere," Harry said and smiled for the first time. It was a small, tired, real smile. "Lately London, a long way," Edward observed. "Yes." There was a pause. The waitress reading did not look up, the loggers did not hear, the boy with the placemats was coloring a submarine. "Visiting?" Edward asked, staying for a time. "May I ask what brings you?" "No," Harry said, still gently, "but thank you for asking." Edward's mouth twitched. It was not quite a smile. It was the expression of a chess player who has just been met with an opening he does not know by name. "Come on," Bella said, reading the air, and she stood. "We should go, Edward. Nice to meet you, Harry. Likewise." He rose because something in his old breeding would not let him stay seated while a lady left, and he nodded to her and then, just fractionally, to Edward. "Mr. Cullen, Mr. Evans." They went out. The bell chimed. The door closed. Harry watched the black Volvo pull out of the lot with a care that did not match the driver's frustration. Edward was not slamming the door because there would be witnesses who would, later, say that he had slammed the door, and he would not have them saying so. It was a small thing, but Harry liked small things. He sat down. He finished his eggs. He paid the woman behind the counter and left her a tip that would be spoken of in the diner for a week. "Anywhere I can rent a place?" he asked her. "A cabin, something quiet." "You don't want to stay at the motel?" "Not my style." She wrote a number on the back of a receipt. "Bill Ellison has a cottage on the river road, old but it's dry, he'll take cash." "Bless you," Harry said and meant it. Outside, the rain had slackened into mist. He hoisted his pack and began to walk, not because he did not have a car, but because walking was, after everything, the thing that had kept him sane. 3 hours in a forest with nothing but one's own feet was better than any of the small and polished potions that his friends had tried to press on him in his worst years. The trees here were different from the trees of the Forest of Dean. Larger, older, wet in a way that was almost geological. He felt a pulse of satisfaction at walking among them. He also felt, 6 miles out of town, that he was not alone. He did not turn. He kept walking. He kept his pace steady and his breath even. He was carrying 2 wands, his own holly and the other, and he could summon either to his hand in the time it took him to think the word. He did not need to think the word. He was not, after all, inexperienced. The presence stayed with him for a mile and then fell back. It was not hostile. It was reading him, weighing him, and when it had decided, it withdrew. He smiled, a very small smile, and walked on. Alice Cullen, he suspected, had just tried to see him and had failed. That was interesting. That was very interesting indeed. He found Bill Ellison's cottage by following the river. It was a plank-built thing, older than Bill, tucked into a bend where the current curled back on itself. Bill was a narrow man with a red beard and a handshake that was mostly knuckles. "You running?" Bill asked when Harry had given him cash for 2 months. "Not the way you mean." "Which way, then?" "Resting?" Bill nodded. He did not press. Harry liked him. "Generator out back. Don't run the heat. If the tank's low, it'll seize. River's clean. You want to drink it, but boil for the first week. Nobody bothers you up here, except the cougars. Cowgars'll bother anybody." "I'll manage." "You look like you will," Bill said and left him the key. Harry sat on the porch as the mist rolled off the water. He ate a pear from his pack and felt for the first time in a long time that he had arrived somewhere. Not home, he had tried home and home had hurt, but somewhere. He laid his fingers on the boards of the porch, closed his eyes, and spoke to the house as he had once spoken to number 12 Grimald Place, an old word of gratitude, a small word of request. The house warmed under his hand. It was not magic in the technical sense, it was good manners. He slept that night better than he had slept in 3 years. Across the river in the Cullen house, the family gathered around a piano that nobody was playing. Alice was on the rug with her knees drawn up to her chest. "I can't see him," she said for the 5th time. "I can't. I try to see the road he took and there's just nothing. It's like looking at a cloud. He's moving through my vision and leaving a hole." "You can see Bella," said Rosalie, because the observation had to be made. "Bella is different. Bella is my friend and I've seen her my whole adult life. This is something else. This isn't a half-breed, this isn't a wolf, I don't know what it is." "He didn't smell human," Edward said. He was at the window, which was his way of not being in a room. Not entirely, but he smelled alive. It was a living scent. Blood, a heart, breath. But there was something layered over it, like tea and iron filings. "Cryptic," Emmett muttered, grinning, because that was his way of being in a room. "His mind was closed to me," Edward said. "Not the way Bella's is closed. Bella's is a door with no handle. His is a door that isn't there." "He told you his name?" Carlyle asked. "Harry Evans." Carlyle, who in the course of his long life had read a very great deal, did not immediately react, but his shoulders, which had been resting, became ordinary shoulders, and his hands, which had been folded, came quietly apart. "Evans," he said. "A common name in England. It's not his." "No," Carlyle agreed, and went to his study to look at books he had bought 30 years ago and not opened in 10. Jasper, who had said nothing, stood near the door. "He wasn't afraid," he said. "He wasn't afraid of Edward, and he wasn't afraid of me when I came near him outside. He registered me. He noticed the car. He didn't adjust." Which means, Jasper said, that either he didn't understand what he was looking at, or he did and he wasn't impressed. "That is," Emmett said, "a very bold guy." "He didn't seem bold," Bella said. "He seemed sad." They all turned. Bella colored under their attention and shrugged. I know, I shouldn't notice those things." But he sat by the window like someone who had sat by windows a lot, and he didn't look afraid of anything. He looked tired. Edward moved from the window and put his hand at the small of his wife's back and said nothing. Alice, on the rug, closed her eyes and tried again to see the road on which the stranger walked, and again found nothing, a hole in her sight the shape of a man. Upstairs, Carlyle opened a book whose spine cracked because it had not been opened in a long time, and he looked at a woodcut of a scarred boy from a pamphlet printed in Prague in 1998, and he read a paragraph 3 times, and he closed the book and he sat down. It could not be, he thought. It could, perhaps, be. Outside, the mist came down over the river. In his cottage, Harry Potter slept the deep sleep of an animal that has found its burrow. Above him, in the rafters, the old house listened, liked what it heard, and decided to keep him. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The Cullen house, he gave them 3 days. 3 days was a courtesy he paid to any predator that had been polite to him. It was time enough for them to research him, fail to find him, and have the decency to be frightened. It was time enough for him to walk the edges of forks and find where the forest thickened and where the wolves ran, because there were wolves and they were not, he confirmed, entirely wolves, and to know the town's rhythms. The coffee truck at 6, the school bus at 7:20. The logging convoy at 4, the late drift of pickup trucks from the roadhouse at 11. On the morning of the 4th day, he put on a clean shirt and a dark coat, set a pot of water on the stove because he intended to be home in time for tea, and walked the 3 miles to the Cullen house. He did not take either road. He took the forest. He had been 7 minutes into the trees when he felt the cold eyes on him. He did not alter his pace. He hummed lightly, a tune his mother had hummed to him, which he remembered mostly from a scrap of memory that was not entirely his own. When at last he came out of the forest into the Cullens' clearing, he stopped at the tree line and waited. The Cullen house was beautiful. Whoever had designed it had understood that a house ought to breathe, to lean into the weather rather than pretend away from it. The south face was mostly glass. Through the glass he could see, very clearly, 7 people standing very still. Harry adjusted the cuffs of his coat, because his mother, whom he had not really known, would have wanted him to, and he walked across the lawn. He was halfway across when Jasper Cullen, moving as no human could, came out of the tree line to his left. He did not intercept. He fell in at a respectful 5-pace distance. "Morning," Harry said without turning. "Morning," said the southern voice. "Lieutenant." Harry guessed. "Major." "Confederate, a long time ago. Before uniforms, I was a boy. After, I was a thing. You don't sound like a thing." "I try." They reached the porch together. Carlisle Cullen was already at the door because he had heard the footsteps and had not wanted to be a guest in his own threshold. He was a tall man, blond, with a face like an honest chapel. He offered his hand. Harry took it. The touch startled Carlisle. He did not show it in his face. He showed it in the very slight flaring of his nostrils. "Dr. Cullen," Harry said. "My name is Harry Potter." The family inside heard him. They heard, and Edward in particular went rigid at the piano, because Harry had given 2 names in 2 days, and the second was a true name, and he had given it freely. Carlisle inclined his head. "It's an honor," he said. "Please come in." "Thank you." They crossed the threshold together. Harry stopped just over the door and said gently, "May I ask my host for permission to speak a word upon this house?" "You may," said Carlisle, who did not know what a word upon a house was, but who had met enough people in his long life to know that you do not refuse a request that is politely framed. Harry laid 2 fingers on the doorframe. He spoke a single syllable, too quietly to be heard. The glass panels of the south wall, all of them, shivered, as though a very soft wind had passed through the house. A small, clear sound like a struck crystal rose and faded. The grandfather clock in the hall paused its tick, picked it up again, and kept time from there. 7 faces looked at him. "A blessing," Harry said to Carlisle's raised eyebrow. "My great-grandmother used to say that a house is a polite creature and that you owe it a word at each entry and exit. I have been remiss on my first visit. Now we are even, I see. I'm sorry, I imagine that was startling." "Startling." Carlisle said, mild. "Yes, please sit." Harry sat in the armchair that Esme, who had not yet spoken, indicated to him. He noticed her. He noticed how the whole house was in some fundamental way hers. He bowed his head slightly to her, and she was charmed, though she would not have said so. They were all of them, this he learned in the first quarter hour, exquisitely polite in a way that only people who have lived several lifetimes can be. "I'll answer your questions," Harry said. "Some of them. As truthfully as I can. In exchange, I'd like some of yours answered." "I think we might help each other." "We have no reason," Rosalie said, "to think you can help us." "No," Harry said, "you don't, but I have reason to think you may help me, which gives us somewhere to start." He looked at each of them. "My full name," he said, "is Harry James Potter. I was born in England in 1980. I am 24 years old, and I do not seem to be aging as I should. I am a wizard, which means I have the kind of magic you have probably read about in your doctor's rare book collection, Doctor. I am, I think, the last person to have walked away from an old war in my country that your kind were distant witnesses to, and I do not intend to walk into another one. I have no interest in politics. I have no interest in mastery. I have no interest in being found." He let the words settle. "You are," he went on, "vampires, not of the kind I met in the Balkans, who are closer to ghouls than to you. You are a different species. You drink, at least here, from animals. Your coven leader is a physician who has lived in the order of 2 centuries. Your youngest, if I'm not mistaken, is 13. Your eldest in body may be 19. I find your restraint remarkable. I would like to meet it with my own." "You came here," Edward said, because Bella Swan has married a vampire, and I heard the news, and I guessed that if there was anywhere in the Americas where I might sit down without being asked to account for myself, it would be a house that already has things to hide." "Gossip," Rosalie said, disbelieving. "You came all this way on gossip?" "I came," Harry said, "on Albus Dumbledore's letters, my old headmaster. He kept a private correspondence with your Dr. Cullen through the ordinary post for 30 years. I inherited the letters when he died." Carlisle's face at last changed. He did not. He said softly, "He did. He signed them a Wulfric, which was a game he played with people who did not know all his names. He wrote about you in the 70s. A very interesting American, old enough to have read books that have burned. He called your condition more than once a triumph of temperament over design. Oh, Albus, Carlyle said, half laughing. You knew him, Edward said, startled. I knew him, said Carlyle, as a man of letters, a colleague at distance. Forgive me. I did not recognize in myself that I had ever wanted to tell you this. He wrote well about you, Harry said, to ease him. He said you had made of yourself something no one else on your continent had dared to make. He was, Carlyle said, very kind. There was a quiet that was not awkward. It was, Harry thought, the quiet of a house settling back onto its beams after a long-held breath. He lifted his hand, palm up, above the coffee table and spoke another quiet word. A sphere of pale gold light rose from his palm the size of a plum and drifted up toward the ceiling. It paused, turned on its own axis, and divided itself into a slow constellation of smaller lights. They drifted down and settled, one above each shoulder in the room, the way votive candles settle in an old church. For the record, Harry said, smiling a little. So that there is no misunderstanding. Emmett, in the corner, laughed out loud. It was a big, open laugh, the laugh of a man who has just been shown a trick at a party and has decided to believe in it. That is the coolest thing I have ever seen, Emmett said. Thank you. Do it again. Later. I'm going to hold you to that. Noted. Rosalie, who had not wanted to be charmed, was being charmed against her will. Alice came to sit on the arm of Carlyle's chair. I can't see you, she said, directly, as though she had been waiting to say it for 4 days. I try and there's nothing. I know. Why? Harry considered how to answer. Because prophecy tried to shape my life once, he said at last, and I would not be shaped. I have put up what I suppose you would call a windbreak. I am sorry, it's not personal. It is simply a thing I carry now. Can you take it down? Not without undoing things I don't know how to undo. That's annoying. I know. I like you anyway, Alice said reluctantly. That, Harry said, is kind of you. Esme, who was still by the kitchen archway, stirred at last. You must be hungry, she said. I'm sorry, I haven't thought. Coffee. Tea, we keep some for guests. Tea, Harry said gratefully. If it's not a bother. Never, said Esme. She brought a tray. Harry rose to help and was politely prevented. He sat again. He took the cup she offered. The steam curled up and a little of the weariness that had been in him, unnoticed, went out of his shoulders. Esme saw it. Esme, Harry understood, always saw those things. He drank and spoke. He told them cleanly of the war. He left out, without lying, several of its worst hours. He told them of an old prophecy, of a dark wizard who had split his own soul and died, of a green light that he had walked away from twice. He told them that he had been the boy who lived, and then, for a brief and terrible month, he had been the man who won, and that after the trials were over and the statues were raised, he had found he could not be the man that his country wanted. He told them that he had discovered in the years of wandering that followed that he did not seem to age, that he did not seem to sleep when he did not wish to, that the things that ought to kill a man did not, for him, finish the job. He told them that he had confronted this with the calm of a person who had already been dead once and was, as a result, harder to impress. He did not say the words master of death. Those were words for later, if ever they listened. When he was done, Carlyle set down his own cup, though he had not drunk from it. It was, after all, a prop, and he said, Harry, please forgive the question. May I ask what you want from us? A quiet place to sit, Harry said, for a while. Someone to talk to who will not faint when I do small wonders. And, Edward said quietly, what do we want from you? That, Harry said, I cannot answer, but I am willing to find out. Edward looked at Bella. Bella, for her part, had been sitting on the arm of Edward's sofa and had been quietly not drinking her tea. She set the cup down. I have to tell him, she said. Bella, Edward said. No, look at him. I trust him. Bella, Edward. Edward exhaled without breath to exhale. All right. Bella stood. She came to Harry's chair. She was nervous because she was also slightly sick, though she did not know yet why. I have to tell you that I'm pregnant, Bella said, with Edward's baby, which apparently can happen, because he's well, he's him, and I'm well, I. And the pregnancy is not normal. It's 4 days along and the baby is, I don't know, a lot further. I don't know how long I have. I'm not, Edward is, we don't know. Harry set his cup down. He looked at her. Not with pity, Pity is a terrible thing to give to a stranger. He looked at her as a healer, as a wizard, as a man who had watched his godfather die from something that might have been stopped if somebody in the room had known one more old word. "May I?" he asked, extending his hand, palm upward, not touching. "Yes." He laid 2 fingers just above her collarbone and closed his eyes. The air around them hushed. The light in the room dimmed by a shade as though a cloud had gone across the window, though there was no cloud. He hummed, very low, a single note. Bella felt along her sternum something cool and slow pass through her, a finger drawn down a page. Harry opened his eyes. "It is not killing you," he said precisely. "Yet. There is a drain on your blood's iron and a second drain on your reserves of calcium. The child is doing what she is meant to do, but she is doing it with tools that are, forgive me, borrowed. I can slow the drain. I can weave a cradle of a sort around your abdomen that will give you more time. I cannot give you forever. You will have to be transformed, I think, at the birth or sooner, but I can give you time. I think perhaps 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Bella said, like a person repeating a lottery number. Perhaps 7, no promises. Edward had come off the couch without moving through the space between. He was at his wife's side, his hand on her back. He did not speak. He could not. "Mr. Cullen," Harry said gently, "I don't need thanks. I need your permission to come here as often as I can." "You have it," Edward said. "Will you look at the child?" Bella said. "Tell me she is well." "I would be honored." He placed 2 fingers below her sternum very softly and closed his eyes again. This time the hum was lower. It carried a small human syllable at the end, something almost like a word. Bella felt very gently, as though a small hand had, just for a moment, pressed back against hers. When he opened his eyes, they were damp and they were smiling. "She is remarkable," he said. "She is already awake in the way that newborns are awake. She hears your voice. She knows her father's voice. She is a hybrid, as you have guessed, and she is not a danger to herself. She is not a danger to you that I cannot help with. She is a wonder, Mrs. Cullen." "Bella," Bella said, helpless. "Bella." Rosalie, who had been watching, who had been silent, got up and left the room. She did not slam any doors. She did not trust her face to be in the room, Harry thought, for another minute. Esme followed her after a moment, calmly. "I don't know how to thank you," Bella said. "Then don't, please." Edward pressed his forehead against his wife's hair and said, against the silence, "You have a place here for as long as you will have us." "Thank you," Harry said. "You play chess," Emmett said from the corner, because somebody had to put the afternoon back on its feet. "Badly." "Perfect," Emmett said, and rummaged for the board. Harry stayed until evening. He ate a piece of pie Esme had made for a guest she had known for a week was coming. He played 3 games of chess with Emmett and lost 2 politely. He met Bella's father in passing. Charlie had come to the door with a fish on ice, because that was Charlie's method of expressing concern, and shook the chief's hand, and smiled in a way that did not set off any of the quiet alarms Chief Swan carried inside him after 30 years as a small-town policeman. When the sky began its long, gray dimming, Harry rose. "I should walk home," he said. "My kettle is still, I am ashamed to say, on the stove." "Your what?" Emmett said. "Kettle? Of course your kettle. I'll come back tomorrow if I may, please," Carlyle said at the threshold. Harry turned. "Dr. Cullen," he said, "before I go, there is something I should tell you that I did not earlier, because I wanted to know the shape of your family before I burdened you. It is likely that trouble will follow me here. Old vampires from Eastern Europe who hold a grudge of long standing, they will come first. The Volturi, if they learn what you are carrying," he nodded slightly toward Bella, "will come second. I am not bringing these things to your door already invites them, but I am bringing, possibly, a few more than you would otherwise have had." Carlyle looked at him very long. "Do you leave then?" he said. "Not unless you ask me." "Then stay," Carlyle said. Harry inclined his head. "I will," he said. He stepped out onto the porch. The rain had begun again, politely, after holding off for his visit. He lifted his face to it and smiled. Behind him in the Cullen house, Alice climbed onto the arm of the sofa where Edward and Bella were still sitting and rested her small head on her brother's shoulder. "I still can't see him," she said. "I know, but I trust him. I know. That's new for me. I know." Edward kissed his wife's hair and looked out at the garden. The stranger was at the tree line. As they watched, he lifted a hand without turning, a casual farewell, and stepped into the forest and was gone. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. Threshold. The next 2 weeks arranged themselves around a rhythm Harry had not known he had been missing. He woke early in his cottage, drank the black tea he had carried in tins from a shop in Shoreditch, walked the 3 miles to the Cullen house and spent the day there. He returned by late evening. He slept well. He did not, for the first time in a very long time, dream of a boy in a forest choosing to die. Bella was under his care, which was a phrase that Bella had tolerated only because he had framed it as under your tolerance. He was at her side twice a day. Morning and night he renewed the weave he had put around her, a lattice of old midwifery, Gaelic in its bones, held together with a thread he had learned in Prague from a witch who taught him, because he had fetched her bread during a snowstorm. The lattice could not carry the pregnancy, but it could hand the burden back and forth between the mother and the room. The room, magical by virtue of the Cullen family's simple willingness to love one another, was a surprisingly capable nurse. Bella ate, drank, slept, which Bella had not been doing. The hollows beneath her eyes smoothed. She was still carrying a storm, but the storm was no longer blowing through an unglazed window. Thank you, Edward told Harry every morning, and Harry had come to understand that when Edward said thank you, it was a kind of religious observance, a crossing oneself, the acknowledgement that one lived by favor. Don't. Harry said every morning, and they nodded at each other gravely, and drank the tea Esme had brought and began the day. Emmett had challenged him to an arm wrestle on the 4th day. Harry, who had arm wrestled werewolves for a pint, had agreed. They sat across from each other at the dining room table. Jasper refereed, which was a thing he had not done in 40 years and which had woken a small, amused part of him. Rosalie lounged on the back of Emmett's chair and pretended indifference. Alice sat on the table. Esme watched from the kitchen. You don't have to be gentle with me, Emmett said cheerfully. I'm a big boy, I noticed. Go, Harry braced himself. Emmett pressed. For 3 seconds there was a very ordinary contest, a young man of ordinary strength against a cliff face. Harry's arm did not move. Emmett very slowly stopped grinning. You're cheating, he said, admiring. A little. What are you doing? Distributing the load to the table. I am, at the moment, trying to out-arm wrestle the table. The table is holding up admirably. That is the worst arm wrestle I have ever been in. I know, do it fair. If I do it fair, I will dislocate my shoulder. Try, Harry tried. His hand went backwards so fast Emmett had to catch it before it hit the oak. Better, Emmett pronounced. Now we're friends, are we? Yes. Emmett rose, patted Harry on the shoulder with enough force to knock a smaller man across the room, and wandered off to find a football to throw at Jasper. Alice, still on the table, swung her legs. I know you meant the cheat one as a tease. Yes, Emmett needed that. He hasn't had a good joke in a month. I'll keep it up. Please do. She tilted her head. The fuzziness of him had stopped upsetting her. She had decided, she told herself, to enjoy it. He was the first thing in a very long time she could not see coming, and she had discovered that this felt less like blindness and more like privacy. She could, for the first time in 60 years, watch a person without already knowing the end. You have a sadness, she said. Yes. It's older than you are. Yes. I like you, Alice said again and hopped off the table. He laughed quietly. He had not, he realized, been laughed out of by a sister in a long while. On the 7th day of his residence, he met Jacob Black. They did not meet well. Jacob had arrived in the Cullen driveway with the crackling dislike of a man whose body disliked the smell of the house, and who had, additionally, learned that the girl he loved was carrying a child that was not his and that, for all intents and purposes, was eating her alive. Jacob had come because he had been asked by Bella and because he loved her. He was not in a mood to meet anyone. He smelled Harry before he saw him. He did not know what he smelled. He knew only that it did not smell like a vampire, it did not smell like a werewolf, it did not smell like a human, and it did not smell like anything in his experience, which, because his experience was narrow, was upsetting. Harry was on the porch with a book. He looked up, nodded, and went back to reading. Who are you? Jacob said. Harry, that's not what I asked. I know. Harry set the book aside. He stood. He was 6 feet tall and slim, and in the height of his stance very relaxed. You are Jacob, I've heard a lot about you. From who? Bella. Mostly good, great, who are you? A friend. Jacob's jaw flexed. His shoulder muscles had begun doing a thing that Harry had seen often in men who were, without meaning to, halfway to being something else. He watched it with a professional attention. I would be really grateful. He said mildly, if you did not turn into a wolf on this porch. You know what I am? Yes, they told you. No, I recognized a shape you make. Also, you are 3 inches away from the change. If I were you, I'd take a deep breath. Ready? Don't patronize me. I'm not. I'm trying to give you something to push against. Jacob stared at him. Slowly, his shoulders settled. The wolf, as is the nature of wolves, hated to be noticed by humans who did not flinch. What are you? He asked again from a lower place. I'm a wizard. That's not a thing, and yet. Harry's mouth flicked up at the corner. Come in. Bella is resting. She'll want to see you. Is she still? She is better than you have reason to expect. I have been making her better. She is still in danger, but less than she was yesterday. Jacob looked at him as though uncertain whether he wanted to shake the man or hit him. You should have come for me earlier, he said. I came as soon as she asked. She would have asked me. She did not want to worry you. That is, Jacob said bitterly, the whole story of me and her. I know. Jacob pushed past him into the house. Harry let him go. He went back to his book. A moment later, Edward came out silent as always. That went better than I expected, Edward said. He needed someone who would not recoil. He doesn't like being handled. I know, I didn't handle, I mirrored. Forgive me, I had to. He was halfway to the change. I know. Will he be angry later about the mirroring? Yes, I will apologize later then. That, Edward said after a small pause, is new to him. He is not, he added, smiling faintly, accustomed to apologies. Then that, Harry said, will be educational. They stood together on the porch. The rain had stopped. A shaft of low sun had come down through a gap in the clouds like a benediction. Harry, Edward said, There was an incident last night. Yes, I saw. Edward's head turned sharply. You were there. I was within a mile. I did not intervene because you did not need me to. A man on the ridge. An older man. Half turned, not fully. A messenger sent to find me. Sent by a coven I had disagreements with in the Balkans some years ago. The coven had been feeding on children and I had, as diplomatically as the circumstances allowed, removed them. The survivor is petty. He died. He died, Harry said without inflection. Not by my hand directly. I used an old word. If it is any consolation, he died as painlessly as a man can die who has been walking with a soul that was eating his soul. Your face, Edward observed, is very serene. I do not enjoy it. I am not sorry for it. Those are two different things. Edward considered that for a long moment. Yes. He said, I suppose they are. Your family does not need to know. Jasper will know. He has sent enough to know. Then tell Jasper what he needs to know. I trust Jasper to know and to keep knowing. Edward nodded slowly. He is, of all of us, the one who would most want to know. Then tell Jasper. Will there be more scouts? Yes, 1 a week perhaps. I have a system for them. I will not disturb your house. Edward looked at him for a moment as though reassessing a book he had thought he had read. I understand now, he said quietly, why Carlyle is calm. He has been waiting all his long life for a man who is not frightened of hard mercy. You are that man. I would not have put it so kindly. Kindness is one of my faults. I approve of your faults. They went back inside. That evening Harry taught Bella how to breathe. It sounds a small thing. It was not a small thing. The breath he taught her was called in his own language Encylide, the trickle, and it was the breath that old healing midwives used to carry pain sideways out of a patient into the room, out of the room into the ground. By the time he had taught her for an hour, she was sitting cross-legged on the couch without pain for the first time in 3 days. Edward sat behind her, his hand on the base of her spine because Edward had the coldness that eased her fever, and his face had a look that Harry did not let himself inspect too closely. He left before midnight. The walk home was cold. He allowed himself, because he was alone, to let his wand into his hand. He did not need it. He had not needed it for 6 years. But there was a comfort in the wood. It was a piece of a tree that had once grown in a country he could still, if he tried, feel in the soles of his boots. He was 2 miles from his cottage when he felt it, not the same scout. This was farther away, further up, sitting very still in a pine. Patient, Harry stopped and tilted his head. Yes, he said conversationally at the wind. I thought so, he walked on. At the porch of his cottage he made tea. He drank it, he set the cup aside, he put out the lantern. Then he went out through the back door, walked 6 minutes upriver, took the hollow path that dipped below the ridge, climbed the far side on bare feet. He had left his boots at the cottage. Boots sing on pine needles, and came up behind the watcher's tree without the watcher knowing. The watcher was a woman. She was small, cold-eyed, and very still. She did not smell of the Balkans. She smelled of Volturi. Harry leaned on the trunk and looked up at her. Good evening, he said pleasantly. She did not startle. She was too well trained to startle. But there was a half-second delay before her eyes found him, a delay so brief that most observers would have missed it, and Harry, who had lived among professionals, did not miss it. Good evening, she said at last. You've been sitting there for 4 hours. 3, my mistake. Who are you? I am Harry Evans. I am renting the cottage by the river. You're welcome to come down. I have tea. She did come down after a moment, dropping from the branch without sound. She landed lightly. She wore gray, which Harry had found was the color the better sort of professional wore when they wanted neither to be missed nor to be photographed. My name is Cullen, she said, of the guard. Yes, how may I help you? I am instructed, she said, to observe. Observe what you like. Report what you like. I will not interfere with your errand. May I ask, he said politely, what drew your master's attention? Her eyes flicked at last with a small pride. A vampire named Vulturi of the Carpathian coven did not return from his errand. Ah, he was your scout. He was. You killed him. He was feeding on children. Harry's voice did not change. Forgive me. I presumed that the Vulturi did not care about such things. I am willing to be corrected. Cullen, who had been trained since her turning to affect indifference in precisely this kind of conversation, gave him a look that was almost appreciative. We do not, she said, care about such things. We care about violations of the statute. Vulturi was not observing any statute. No. I will observe as much of your statute as I can while I am here. Tell your master so. I am not here to cause trouble. I am here because I wish to rest. What will you tell them? I will tell them, Cullen said after a moment, that a sorcerer has taken up residence with the Cullen coven. Ah, is that the word you use, sorcerer? It is the word we have in our archives. I do not mind it. I prefer wizard, but I understand the distinction to be regional. Noted. She watched him. He watched her. A long moment passed. May I give you a cup of tea before you go? He asked. She almost smiled. No, thank you. I should report. Go safely, Mr. Evans. She turned to go and paused. Over her shoulder she said, without inflection, a warning. Jane will come. Jane will wish to test you. You should be ready. Thank you. It is not a kindness, she added. It is professional courtesy. I expect payment in kind at some future date. I accept the debt. She was gone. The pine, stirred by nothing, swayed. Harry stood a moment longer. Then he turned for his cottage. He made tea again because the first cup had gone cold. He drank it at his own window, watching the mist come down over the river. In the Cullen house, Alice Cullen sat suddenly up from the floor where she had been drawing a dress for Bella on a sketch pad. The pencil clattered. Edward was in the doorway before the pad hit the ground. What did you see? Jane, Alice said, very small. Jane is coming? When? I don't know. Soon. Not tomorrow, but soon. Did you see Harry? No, he is the hole, but I saw Jane. I saw her standing at the edge of a field and she was looking at the hole and she was angry. Was she alone? She was then. She won't be when she comes back. Edward exhaled. Get Carlyle, he said. He's already on the stairs. Carlyle was on the stairs. Edward watched him come down with the old, patient tread of a man who had learned in a very long life that urgency did not make things arrive sooner. Get him on the phone, Carlyle said. I already did, said Alice, and she held out her phone, which was ringing. Harry answered on the second ring. I know, he said before Carlyle could speak. She just left my woods, a scout, not Jane yet, a polite one named Cullen. She came to see whether I was a real thing. She has gone back to report. Jane, I expect, is approximately a week away. You knew, Carlyle said. I suspected. I am sorry to have been right. Do you need us to do anything? Yes, Harry said. Sleep, eat, love each other. I will take care of the rest, Harry, Doctor. Do not face her alone. I won't, Harry said. Face her alone on your property. On my own, I can and I may. Good night, Doctor. Kiss Esme for me. He hung up. He stood at the window for another moment, and then, because he was tired, and because the house wanted him to sleep, he slept. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. The birth Bella's time came sooner than Harry had promised, and later than Harry had feared. It was not the lattice's fault. The child was simply a Cullen. Having decided she would arrive, she arrived, and the universe adjusted. She chose a gray morning, 6 weeks and a day after Harry had first laid his hand above her collarbone, which was a morning that smelled of wet cedar and wood smoke, and the particular, clean ozone the forest produced before rain. Harry had been sleeping on the floor of the music room for the last 10 days, which he did, because the lattice was easier to hold from a distance of meters than a distance of miles. He woke at the sound of Bella's small, controlled intake of breath at 4 in the morning and was on his feet before the second breath. Edward, he called unnecessarily because Edward was already there. The spine, Edward said. I know, lay her flat. Carlyle, here. Carlyle was in the doorway with his black bag. He had not slept either. None of them had been sleeping, not really, for a fortnight. They moved her to the low couch where they had prepared her. Harry had spent an evening transfiguring it into something that bore less resemblance to furniture and more to a birthing cradle. A soft, shallow thing with walls shaped like cupped hands. It was wrapped, visibly even to Bella, in a pale lace of light, a net that Harry had renewed every 12 hours. The pain came, and Harry took it sideways with Ensillied the way he had taught her to take it. He carried it out of her body and into his own, and from his own into the room, and the room, breathing with the lattice, carried it into the walls. The house, which had liked him from the first, let him use it. The wood creaked softly in sympathy. I can do this, Bella said through her teeth. You can do this, Harry said. I know, she said. I told you I could. So you did. He laughed once, and she laughed once with him, and then there was no more laughing because the second pain came and she bit down on it and turned her face into Edward's shoulder. Esme was at the head of the couch. Rosalie, who had wept for 9 hours the night before and had resolved that no one would ever know, was at the foot. Jasper was at the door because Jasper was always at the door. Emmett was out with Alice because Emmett needed to run off the anxious parts of his large self, and Alice needed to be in the forest in case her sight came back in a usable way. Jacob arrived at 5 in the morning. He had smelled blood from the reservation and had outpaced his pack getting here. He came up the porch steps 3 at a time. Harry was at the door before Jasper. He did not bar Jacob. He stood aside. Kitchen, he said. We have space in the kitchen. I need you to stand where you can see the couch, but not close. 3 meters. I am going to ask things of you in the next 2 hours. Will you give them? Yes, Jacob said. He was, at that moment, a boy again. He did what he was told. Rosalie started to object. He can't. He can, Harry said. Because I need every body in this house to weigh its pieces on a lattice of mine and to hold the weight steady. I have a warder here. I have a reader there. I have a mother, 2 sisters, a father, a doctor, and a godfather. The godfather is Jacob. He will keep the child breathing if anything goes wrong with my weave. He has, forgive me, a natural affinity for the child. I felt it the moment he crossed the threshold. What does that mean? Jacob asked, because nobody else would have asked, and because Jacob was a boy made of direct questions. I'll explain later. Stand in the kitchen, breathe slow, do not change. Jacob stood in the kitchen and did not change. Bella's pains worsened. The baby, impatient, kicked something loose inside her. Harry felt it happen a half-second before Bella cried out. He was already moving. Carlyle. He said, now. Carlyle cut where Harry had drawn a faint chalked line on Bella's abdomen an hour before. The skin parted cleanly because Harry had woven the skin into a parting around the line. Blood rose, less than there would have been in an ordinary birth, because Harry was siphoning it as it rose and turning it back into Bella through her hand, which Edward held. Breathe, Harry said. Breathe, Bella, 4 in, 4 out, 4 in, 4 out. I am, Bella said, good girl. You are so annoying. I know. The baby came. She was not large. She was pale, pale as her father, with her mother's brown eyes open at once. She breathed like an ordinary baby. She cried like an ordinary baby. She looked, for one long second, directly at Harry, and then her gaze moved to her mother and her father and the house she had arrived in. Harry lifted her. He wrapped her in the linen Esme had ready. He laid her very gently on Bella's chest. "She's perfect," he said. "I know." Bella said, and then, yes. Her heart was failing. It had been failing for 2 minutes already. It had kept going on nothing but the weave Harry had spun beneath her ribs. He had known and had kept the news to himself because knowing would not help. Edward had not known because Edward could not read her, but he saw her face now. "Edward," Harry said. Now, Edward bit, not his wife's throat, but her wrists and her ankles and the joint of her hip on each side and the pulse at her throat. Venom went into her in 5 places at once, because that was what Carlyle had taught, because that was the fastest way. Harry did not watch. Harry was busy. He took the lattice and reshaped it around her, no longer a cradle but a seal, keeping her stable, keeping her heart ticking a little longer, until the venom had ridden every vein it could ride. He said a word. The air in the room sharpened. Bella's body convulsed once and then went still. "She's going," Rosalie whispered. "She's becoming," Harry said. Her heart slowed and slowed and slowed. It did not stop. Harry would not let it stop. It reached a point at which it was ticking once a second, and then once every 2 seconds, and there it stopped, held, and began in a new and different rhythm to do what it would do for the next 3 days. "Is she?" Edward said. "She is the right kind of not dying," Harry said. "She's going to be fine. It will hurt her. It will hurt you watching. She won't show it because she is Bella and because the venom moves through her very cleanly. I suspect she will be one of the calm ones. Carlyle, watch her. Esme, watch him watching her. Rose, will you go warm her a drink just for when she wakes up? She can't drink, she will wake thirsty and she will drink a warm animal drink and it will give her a thing to hold on to. Humor me." Rosalie, who had been about to be obstructive as a matter of principle, humored him. Harry turned then to the kitchen. Jacob had not moved. His eyes were on the baby. "May I?" Harry asked him. Jacob looked up blankly. "May I bring the baby to you for a moment?" Yes, yes. Why?" "Because it would be kind. She was born remembering your voice. I want her to meet you while she can still cry." Jacob opened his arms numbly. Bella had named the baby a week ago for her mother and for Esme, Renesmee Carley. The name was absurd. The name was the name Bella wanted. Harry did not object to absurd names. He had lived with one himself. He laid Renesmee in Jacob's arms, and then, because it was going to happen, he stepped back. Jasper, across the room, straightened. Edward, who could read a thought a mile away, read the thought that passed across Jacob's face. The shape of that thought was simple. Impacted, reordered, imprinted. Jacob Black looked down at a baby born 16 minutes ago, and Jacob Black, who had been in love with her mother for 3 years, rearranged the whole of himself around a new certainty. His heart, his boy's heart, his werewolf heart, his easily confused and grief-hardened heart, settled onto a single point and went still around it. It happened, Harry observed, with a dignity Jacob would not have thought he was capable of. "Oh," Jacob breathed. "Yes," Harry said. "She's... yes." Yes. I'm going to protect her forever," Jacob said, to the ceiling, to the floor, to the walls, to anyone who would listen. "That's it. That's just it. That's just what I am now. Yes." Harry said a third time and gently lifted the baby out of his arms and took her back to her father, who was sitting with his still wife's hand in both of his face made of nothing at all. "Edward." "Yes, your daughter." "Yes." Edward took Renesmee into his arms. His whole body rehinged itself around her as Jacob's had. He bent his head. Renesmee's small fingers reached up and rested on his cheek, and Edward inhaled an unnecessary thing, a human habit, and looked at Harry. "She showed me," Edward said wonderingly. "She showed me. I saw you. I saw you tending her mother from inside. She remembers the hum of your fingers on the wall of the womb. She showed me." "She's a clever girl," Harry said gently. "She has a gift. She is telling me," Edward said, tears that were not tears at the edge of his voice. "She is telling me that she loves me. She is." "Thank you, Edward." "Thank you, Harry." "Go," Harry said. "Take her. Sit. Bella will sleep for 3 days. She needs the house to be steady. Your job now is to be steady." Edward nodded. He went. Harry sat abruptly. He had been standing for 7 hours. He had not noticed the 7 hours until he sat. Esme, who had noticed, put a cup of hot, sugared real tea into his hand from somewhere. "You need a biscuit," she said severely. "I need a biscuit," Harry agreed and ate the biscuit she pushed on him. Carlyle came to him and sat on the arm of the couch. He did not speak for a long time. "You kept her heart beating," Carlyle said. "Yes." Past the point at which it would have stopped. "Yes. I have never seen that done." "It is not a popular thing," Harry said. "It is a subtle thing. I have done it twice. Once for a friend of mine during the war. Once now. I do not know of a third use for it. It is not a miracle. It is an old midwife's word, and the midwife who taught it to me got it from her grandmother, and her grandmother used it on me when I was born. Which is why I am here, I suspect. A closing of a circle." Carlyle looked at him with an expression Harry did not know how to categorize, and then he simply laid his hand on the top of Harry's head and said, "My son." Harry did not answer because he was, at the moment, incapable of answering. The house settled quietly around them. They had 2 days. On the evening of the second day, Alice, who had been sitting with Renesmee on the sofa while Jacob paced the porch, because Jacob could not stand still, stood up very suddenly. "Oh," she said. Edward was beside her in an instant, Renesmee safe against her chest. "What did you see?" "Irina," Alice said in a small voice. "Irina saw Renesmee in the woods. Yesterday, Jacob was running with her. Irina thinks Renesmee is an immortal child. Irina is on her way to Volturi. She will tell Arrow." "Arrow will, oh," Alice, Carlyle said from the doorway. "How long?" 6 weeks, Alice said. "Perhaps less. They will come, all of them. Arrow will come himself, all of them. The whole guard, all the wives, Caius, Marcus, Arrow. They are coming to destroy our family. They are coming under the cover of the charge about Renesmee, but they are not coming for Renesmee. They are coming for—" She turned. She looked at Harry. "They are coming for you," she whispered. Arrow heard Corrin's report. Arrow has decided they are coming for Harry. Harry, who had been very still on the windowsill watching the garden, turned his head. He did not look surprised. He did not, particularly, look alarmed. There was on his face the expression of a man who had been expecting a guest for some time and had now heard the gate latch click. "Well," he said after a moment, "we had better prepare." "How do we?" "I know how," Harry said. "Call your witnesses, all your old friends, call the Denali, call the Amazons, call the Irish, call anyone who owes your family a debt, call them tonight. I will call some friends of mine as well. The forest around this house is about to be a great deal more crowded. And the field," he added, looking down the slope toward the clearing that ran to the river, "is about to be the most famous field in the West for a generation." He stood. He stretched his back, which had set crooked from the long birth. He smiled at Alice and at Carlyle and at Jacob, who had come in from the porch, and at Rosalie, who had risen from where she had been sitting, and at Esme, who had come from the kitchen, and at Edward, who had Renesmee, and at Jasper, who was already at the door with a list in his mind. "We are going to host a very difficult party," he said. "I hope you'll all forgive me. I have some experience. I promise you, we will still be standing when the last guest goes home." "Do you promise?" Edward said. "I promise," Harry said, and he did. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. The gathering Bella woke on the morning of the 3rd day. She sat up as though she had simply been asleep. Her eyes, her new, startling, vampire-red eyes that would, in a month, begin their long, slow tarnish toward gold, opened onto a room that contained her husband, her child, and a young man by the window who was drinking tea and watching her with an expression she would, later, file under brotherly. "Harry," Bella said, in a voice she had not known she owned, a voice that sang where the old voice had muttered, "Bella. Is she is in your husband's arms. She is well. She has missed you." Bella looked at Edward. Edward moved Renesmee into her mother's arms for the first time, and Bella did what every mother has ever done and did not do for a long moment anything else at all. Harry gave her that moment. He gave her, in fact, 30 of them. Then he rose. "I'm going to run you through your first hunt before the witnesses begin arriving," he said. "We have until tomorrow before the house will be full. Let's use the day." "My first hunt? You'll be thirsty soon. We need you steady before 30 strangers come to sleep in your living room." Bella blinked, adjusted, and laughed. "You sound like my mother." "I sound like your great-grandmother. Get up, I promise nothing, but I think we can beat Emmett's record." Emmett from the hall shouted, "You can't watch me." Bella shouted back, and Edward, who had been braced for a wife who might, in the first hour of her new self, be lost to him, or mad with thirst, or cold in a way he could not warm, closed his eyes in unbelieving gratitude as his wife stood up, a vampire, and laughed. She beat Emmett's record. By the afternoon she had eaten 3 elk, was back in her own kitchen, and was learning how to hold her daughter without squeezing. Harry stood at her elbow and talked her through the calibration. Then, when she had it, he stepped away and left her to be with her husband and her child. He went out to meet Eleazar. The Denali had come first because the Denali were closest. Tanya, Kate, Carmen, Eleazar, Garrett, who was not Denali but who had attached himself to Kate with what Harry was informed was a very slow building and mutually amused affection. Tanya, when she stepped into the clearing and saw Harry, stopped. "Oh," she said. "Oh." Eleazar echoed, a beat behind her for entirely different reasons. "What is it, Eleazar?" Kate asked. "He is," Eleazar said, and then had to find a word, which was unusual for Eleazar, who had not had to find a word in several centuries. "He is, I have a gift. My gift is to see what a vampire's gift is. I can see that you are a shield, Mrs. Cullen, and a considerable one. I can see that Alice is a seer, Edward is a reader, Jasper is an empath, Emmett is excessively strong even for our people, and so on. When I look at Mr. Evans, I presume Potter." Harry corrected pleasantly. "When I look at Mr. Potter, I see, Eleazar paused. He had the look of a man trying to describe the color of a sound. "I see a library. I see a very old library that is also a storm, and the library is lit by the storm, and the storm is fed by the library. I do not see a gift. I see a man who has become his own gift, layered into himself. I do not know how to speak of you." "Eleazar," Harry said, "don't worry. Very few people do. You are not a vampire. No, you are not human. Arguably, you have not aged. Not for some time." "Oh," said Eleazar again, and then, with the careful rudeness of old curiosity, "You are a wizard." "Yes, I had," Eleazar said softly, "wanted to meet one for 2 centuries. "Then I am at your service, sir. We shall have a long conversation once the house is no longer under threat." "I would like that." They shook hands, and Eleazar looked for a moment like a young man. The Denali were only the first. They came in over the next 2 days in a steady current. Benjamin and Tia and Ammon and Kebai from Egypt, in robes over hoodies. Benjamin laughing like a boy let out of school. Zephrina and Senna and Kakiri from the Amazon, silent in the house, silent in the forest, silent in the field. Siobhan and Liam and Maggie from Ireland, Siobhan moving like a weather system. Maggie tucked under her elbow watching everyone with the small, clear eyes of a born lie detector. Stefan and Vladimir from Romania, last, who came up the porch and stopped at the step because they had smelled Harry. "You," said Stefan. "Me," said Harry. "You have come a long way since Bucharest. So have you. I heard about your hand." It grew back. "We have forgiven you the massacre," said Vladimir, who was not in the habit of forgiving anyone. "It was a long time ago. Also, Fyodor was a monster." "I thank you. We are here," said Stefan, "because we would very much like to see the Vulturi suffer." "I thought so. We will not take orders from you. I do not give orders." "Good," said Vladimir. "Tea," Harry said. "No, come in anyway." They came in. They did not drink the tea, but they ate, with a dignified appetite, the plates of things Esme had prepared for witnesses she had never met. They conducted a 30-minute study of the Cullen living room, exchanged approving looks, and sat on the stairs with Emmett, who had taken to them at once. By the end of the week, the house was full. The guest house was full. The garage had been converted into a bunkhouse for Benjamin and Tia, who had pronounced it charming. Harry had conjured additional beds in 4 rooms and placed protective wards on each doorway. The wards would not keep anyone out. They would simply sing if anyone tried to cross them who had not been introduced, which Harry thought was a reasonable social accommodation. The wolves came the day after that. Jacob brought his pack up through the woods and over the river in a loose open formation that Harry, who had planned it with him the night before, had watched him rehearse. Sam Uli came next with the Quilute pack after a long exchange in the council that Carlyle, wearing his patience like a cloak, had arbitrated. 18 wolves in all if you counted Lee, which Harry pointedly did. They did not all like to be counted. Lee in particular bristled. Harry, who had once been liked by the brothers Weasley through sheer refusal to give up, greeted her with the same small, courteous nod he gave everyone, and told her, with honest interest, that he had enjoyed a conversation with her father's cousin's old friend during his stay in Seattle. A small, verifiable fib, because in fact Harry had met no such person, but a fib that could be researched and would not, in the end, be investigated. Lee grunted and left him alone. Jacob later grinned. "She doesn't usually talk to anyone," he said. "She didn't talk to me either." She grunted. "Grunts are promising?" "You are," Jacob said, "a very strange man. Thank you." On the 7th evening, with the house full, the guest house full, the garage full, the forest full, and the river quietly the boundary of a sleeping army, Harry held a council. He held it in the clearing. The Cullens came. The Denali, the Amazons, the Egyptians, the Irish, the Romanians, the Quilutes, the pack of Jacob's kin. They sat or stood in the case of the vampires who did not sit on grass in a loose ring. Carlyle took the center, as was his right. "Friends," Carlyle said simply. "You know why you are here. You know what we are accused of. We have a child, and the child is not forbidden. We have a guest, and the guest is not a threat to any of you. The Vulturi are coming, and the Vulturi are coming in bad faith. I have asked you not to fight unless you must. I have asked you to stand as witnesses. I am not a king, and this is not an army. I ask only your willingness to be present at a great wrong and to not let it be done." "You have my willingness," Tanya said, "and mine," Benjamin said, "and mine," Siobhan said, "and ours," said Stefan for his brother and for himself. "And ours," said Sam Uli, and Jacob nodded. Carlyle bowed his head. Then Harry stepped forward because Carlyle had asked him to. "I am a guest of this house," Harry said. "I am the stated reason the Volturi are riding. I want to be clear. I will not fight a war on the Cullens' land. I will not, at the Volturi's pleasure, become an instrument. I came here to be quiet. If the Volturi wish to accuse Renesmee, we will disprove the accusation. If they wish to accuse this house, we will disprove that too. If they wish to accuse me, I will stand before them myself and speak for myself. I am a wizard. You have heard the word, perhaps. I will try to show you small things over the next days so that you understand the shape of what you will see. What I am about to say, I say to all of you with equal respect. In the first hour, if there is fighting, I will not kill. In the second hour, if they come for the child, I may. In the third hour, if they come for the mother or the father or my kin in this house, I will. And in the fourth hour, if they come for any of you who have stood as witnesses, I will be very, very unfair." Vladimir of Romania laughed. It was a dry, small laugh, but it was honest. "I like you," Vladimir said. "Noted." "He is a good man," said Benjamin thoughtfully to Tia. "He is a terrifying man," said Jasper calmly to Alice. "He is both," said Alice, who had at last begun to see little things around him again, a moment at a time. "He is both. That is why I like him." The council went on into the night. Positions were discussed. Roles were parceled out. Emmett, because he was unable not to, broke the tension every 40 minutes with an entirely unscripted joke that did what Jasper, with deliberate calibration, could not have done. By the end of it, the clearing felt like a clearing instead of an anxious field. Esme came down with cups of hot cocoa that the vampires refused with thanks and the wolves consumed in buckets. When at last the guests dispersed to the house and to the lodging, Harry walked the perimeter of the clearing with Kate, because Kate had asked. "May I test the shield your friend misses?" "Cullen has," Kate asked. "It is exciting. I have wanted to meet a shield for a very long time. You may ask her. She will say yes. She is a generous person." "Will you," Kate said after a pause, "test me?" "Test you. My gift is an electric shock. I deliver it through skin. It is, I have been told, unpleasant. What would the test be? You are not a vampire. You are not, Eliezer tells me, a gifted vampire, but you are, he says, a library in a storm. I want to see what happens if I lay a hand on you." "Ah," I ask formally. "I accept formally. Here is good." Harry extended his forearm. Kate, who was tall and sharp-cheeked and had about her the competence of a woman who had practiced a skill for 4 centuries, placed her cold hand just above his wrist. She exerted. Nothing happened. Kate frowned. She tried harder. The hair on her own arm stood up. Harry smiled very slightly. I am sorry, Kate, I absorb it. It is the same trick I use for Jane's gift and for Chelsea's and, if I am not mistaken, for Alex. It is not that I am immune, it is that I am porous. I drink what they throw at me and I lay it down like a small coin in a pocket. I will, if I need to, use those coins later. So you have my shock now. I do. I will give it back when I find the right moment. To Jane, very possibly to Jane, Kate considered him. You are, she said, a genuinely useful man. I aspire to be. They walked on. At the south end of the clearing, where the tree line thinned, Harry stopped and laid his palm on the ground. Will you be setting wards here? Kate asked. Only small ones. The large ward is around the house. The field is open. I want the Volturi to see exactly what they are walking into. They will come expecting a fight. I want them to see a family. And if they strike regardless, then I will strike back, in the order I described to the council. You were not joking, no? Good, Kate said, and then gently, I wanted to be sure. Kate, yes, thank you for asking. I am. Kate said, and she looked, for a moment, almost shy. I am not sure anyone has asked a person as politely for permission to try to electrocute them as we have just exchanged. I imagine not. They laughed together and went back to the house. In the top room, with the lights low, Bella was rocking Renesmee, who was 2.5 weeks old and looked 8. Edward was reading a book and pretending to read a book and watching his wife and watching his daughter and watching the shadows. She's going to sleep through it. Edward said quietly to the air. She is, Harry said from the doorway, because he could not enter a room unheard even when he tried. I have made her a dream. It will stop at the moment it must stop. She will not remember it when she wakes. She will remember only that we sang to her. Will you sing? Your mother-in-law is already singing. I am a terrible singer. I find that hard to believe. I am a terrible singer. I will hum. Will you stay? I will stay. He came into the room. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall. Esme came in a moment later with a blanket for him. He thanked her and did not take the blanket because he did not want her to have to make the trip for nothing. She draped it over his shoulders anyway and left. He smiled at the back of his own neck. The night went down over the Cullen house. The house, warm with many breaths, asleep and not asleep, held them all. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. Old ghosts. The snow arrived the next morning, not gently. It came with the kind of stubborn persistence that suggested it intended to stay a week and would tolerate no objection. By afternoon the clearing was white, the trees bent with weight, and the river had narrowed to a thin black thread between banks of white. Harry took his tea out onto the back porch and sat on the top step with it. Carlyle came and sat beside him. He did not bring a cup because he did not pretend to drink around Harry any longer. Harry had told him, gently, on their second evening, that he did not need props among friends. You have been very kind to us, Carlyle said. You have been very kind to me. I have slept 9 nights in the same room. Did I tell you how long it had been since I last slept 9 nights in the same room? No, 4 years. Carlyle did not answer that directly. He looked out at the white field. May I ask about the rest? He said after a moment. The rest of what you said you are. I have not pressed. I will not press, but if you are willing. Harry set the tea aside. He wrapped his arms around his knees. He looked for a long time at the river. I am, he said at last, what our stories call the master of death. Carlyle, who had read many of Harry's stories, did not argue. There are 3 relics, Harry said, made of the substance of death itself. A wand, a stone, a cloak. The wand wins duels, the stone retrieves shades, the cloak hides the one who wears it. Any wizard can own any one of them. No wizard in recorded history had held all 3 at the same time. I held all 3 at 17. I did not try to. It happened. The wand was given to me when its previous owner disarmed me. The stone was given to me by my headmaster through inheritance. The cloak was my father's. For 1 hour I had all 3 in the forest, and I walked into a clearing, and I let a wand be turned on me, and the wand was, technically, the wand that I had owned, and so the killing curse that struck me did not quite kill me, and I came back. And I have not aged since that hour. You are. Carlyle said, immortal. I am long-lived. I am hard to injure. I am not beyond injury. I am not beyond pain. I am not beyond grief. I am fairly certain, die. I simply have not found the correct way to, and I am not looking. Do you want to? I did, Harry said, for a time, not now. Carlyle laid his hand on the back of Harry's neck, briefly, the way a father lays his hand on the back of a son's neck when there is nothing to say. Harry allowed it. When Carlyle took his hand away, Harry spoke again. The wand is in the bottom of my pack upstairs. I do not use it. It will wreck everything else I do. I use my own wand, which is a lesser thing, and because it is lesser, more precise, I have the stone in my pocket. I carry it because it does not do what people think it does. It does not bring back the dead. It shows me the dead as they were at the hour of their dying, and they are, after a time, tired of being shown, and I do not turn it often. I have the cloak here. He touched the coat on his shoulders. It is woven into the lining. I do not take the cloak out except in extremity. A man in a cloak like that is either invisible or he is noticed, and I prefer the first. And you are, all three, the master? I am the master of what is inevitable, that is all. I cannot stop any of you dying. I cannot cause any of you to die unless I will it, and I am willing to pay a price for it, which I am not. I can, in extremity, ask death to take a little longer over someone, and death, in a good mood, sometimes complies. That is all. I am not a god. I am not Arrow's equal in political cunning, and I am very glad not to be. I am a young man in an old shape. I am finding out what the shape means. And we, Carlyle said, who have looked for kindred. You have found me, I have found you, you are kinder than you had any right to be. Carlyle nodded. Harry, doctor, when this is over, would you stay? Harry, who had expected the question, it had been forming in Carlyle's face for 3 days, did not answer at once. He watched the black seam of the river. I don't know, he said honestly. I would like to. I would miss you all terribly. I would also, in the next month, acquire a new habit of being loved. That would terrify me. You would have to be patient. We are, Carlyle said, very patient. Yes, I know you are, all right. When this is over, if there is an over, and I mean to make sure there is, we will talk about it. I do not promise yes. I do not promise no. I promise to try. That is enough. Thank you. They sat a while longer. Then Esme came out, pointed at the tea, and said it was cold, and took it away and came back with another cup. Harry laughed, a little helplessly. He accepted. He drank. That afternoon, because the snow was steady and the witnesses were drowsy with it, Harry took Rosalie with him into the woods. He had asked her the night before. Rosalie, who had been watching him sideways for 2 weeks and had not yet decided what she wanted to say to him, had agreed. They walked to the ridge where the scouts had been, and Harry showed her the tree Corin had sat in, and they found a place further up the ridge from which they could watch the west road. Expecting someone? Rosalie asked. Jane, Harry said. I have a feeling about today. She is close. You want me with you because if anything goes wrong, I would rather have you carry me back to the house than any of the others. You would not panic. That is, Rosalie said, dry, an unusual compliment. I mean it. I know you do. That's why it's unusual. They sat in the snow. Harry had warmed the ground under them, a small thing, an Irish spell, and had spread a blanket on it. The snow collected on their shoulders. Neither of them moved. I wanted to apologize, Rosalie said after a while. You don't. Yes, I do. I was unkind to you in the first week. I was unkind because I did not want to be hopeful, and you had made me hopeful, and I did not trust the hope. Then you kept Bella alive. Then you gave Renesmee to me to hold, unasked, on the 3rd morning. Then you asked me to warm a drink for Bella when Bella was still becoming, as though we were all going to have a quiet evening. I have been very angry with you for a long time for being a kind man. Ah, I'm over it now. Good. I'm sorry. Accepted? Thank you, he smiled. I am sorry, in turn, that I was not here earlier. I would have liked to meet the girl you were the year before you were turned. I think she was a remarkable person. Rosalie, who almost never cried vampires are spared the mechanical tears and cursed with the rest, looked at him for a long moment and then away. She was, Rosalie said. They did not speak further about it. They did not need to. An hour later, the road below them stirred. A figure walked onto it from the west. She was small. She wore a black traveling cloak. The cloak had a hood. She walked like a person who had been walking a long time and would walk a long time more, without effort, without ornament, without need of company or rest. Jane Volturi had arrived. She is alone, Rosalie breathed. She is not, Harry said. There is a second on the ridge above us. Alec, No, Alec is 5 miles back with the rest. This is Felix. Felix is here to carry her home if something happens to her. He will not attack unless I kill her, and I am not going to kill her. He will watch and report. How do you know? I know the shape of a bodyguard. He has been running at her shoulder for 4 centuries. He is not in a position to stop. He is anxious. He is unhappy. Stay here. Do not come down unless I wave. Harry? If she hurts you, she will try. She will fail. That is the point of the meeting, Harry. I love you, Rose. Stay here. He stood. He walked down the slope in the snow with his hands at his sides without the wand. Jane, on the road, saw him and stopped. Harry Potter, she said when he was close enough to hear. Miss Vulturi. I have been instructed to observe. Corin said so. Corin has been decommissioned. I am sorry for that. You will not be sorry when you have met Corin's replacement. No, I believe I would grieve to meet a less polite scout. Jane's mouth moved. She was not smiling. She was, for a woman of her age and position, testing the muscles of her jaw because she had not used them yet in this encounter, and she did not know yet whether she would need them for a smile or a bite. I have come, she said, to test you. I know. You consent? Yes. I would rather you did the test now, on an empty road with no one in earshot, than in a clearing with my family behind me. Your family? Yes, they are not. They are. Very well. She looked at him. The look was the look. It is difficult to describe a thing that Jane had been doing for 500 years, a thing she had honed, against 500 years of victims, into a precise and terrible form. The look had in it the whole technology of her gift, an expectation, a shaping, an opening of her mind toward the body of another, and a clenching that struck like a thrown net. It hit Harry. It entered him. It could not take hold. He absorbed it as he had absorbed Kate's electricity, and, unlike Kate's electricity, it ran through him and away into the snow, because pain was not a coin Harry cared to keep. Jane's face, for the briefest flicker, went entirely still. I see you are trying, Miss Volturi. I promise you I am not resisting. There is nothing to resist. Please take your time. She tried again. She tried with a strength she had not tried since the duels of her own youth. Her hands began to tremble because the exertion for her was like pulling a rope against a weight that was not there. She had been, for 5 centuries, a woman whose rope always pulled something. Enough, Harry said gently. She stopped. She looked at him with eyes that had gone the color of a very hot coal. Master Potter, she said, and she gave him not a curtsy but an inclination of her head. Miss Volturi, you will be interesting. Master Arrow will be very interested, I am told. You will come with us or you will be destroyed. Neither, I think, Miss Volturi. I would invite you, when the audience begins, to consider a third option. We shall find ourselves in a clearing in 5 days, if I have not miscounted. I shall see you then. You shall. Good day. He turned. He walked back up the slope on the ridge above. Felix had not moved. When Harry passed within his sight, Felix, with a gesture that might have been a salute and might have been a curse, lifted one finger at the brim of his hood and then melted into the trees. Rose watched Harry come up. She did not rise. You are bleeding. He looked down. There was a trickle of blood at his nose. He wiped it. It stopped. That is a first, he said, surprised. She pulled harder than I expected. She is going to be very, very unhappy. Yes, Arrow is going to be very interested. Yes. This is bad. No, Harry said cheerfully. This is the plan. Now Arrow will come himself and not send a deputy. Now Arrow will want to negotiate. Now we will have a conversation I can use. Come on. They walked home in the snow. The dusk had begun to come down. Rosalie, who had not known what to make of him at the first, and who had, she realized, made up her mind without noticing, let her shoulder brush his once as they walked. Harry, Rosalie? Never mind. Later? Later. They came in through the kitchen door. Esme, who had been watching for them, pressed a warm cloth into his hand without a word. He wiped his face. He handed her the cloth back. She took it, folded it, put it in the laundry basket, and then, as though she had thought better of her own restraint, patted him on the cheek. There, she said briskly, and she went to check on Renesmee. Harry stood a moment in the kitchen, rubbing his cheek, and then, because he was, in a way he had forgotten, a young man, he smiled. Upstairs, Alice spoke softly to herself. Arrow, she said, will offer to meet him alone. When? Carlyle asked from the doorway. Day after tomorrow. Will Harry go? Yes. Will he come back? Alice paused. I think so, she said. You think? I don't see him, Carlyle. I see the meeting. I see Arrow walking into a stand of trees. I see Arrow walking out of the stand of trees. I don't see who is still walking at that point, but I see Arrow walking out, so Arrow survives. Whether he walks out satisfied or frightened or empty, I do not know. He will come back, Edward said behind her. You sound certain. I am. Why? Because he is our brother now, Edward said. And he wants to. When he wants to come home, he comes home. Alice nodded slowly. She laid her head on her brother's shoulder. Brother, she said, approving. Brother, Edward said. In the kitchen, Harry, who had very good ears, pretended not to have heard. Chapter 6, End Chapter 7. The diplomats. The letter arrived the next morning by way of a raven, which is not a thing Forks is accustomed to, and not a thing the Volturi typically used. The bird came to the south porch railing, tilted its head at Esme, and dropped an envelope on the boards at her feet. Then it bowed, because it had been instructed to bow, and flew off in the direction of Seattle. Esme picked up the envelope with the wary respect of a woman who has been sent a letter from somebody's grandmother. It was sealed in purple wax with the letter V. The paper was vellum, and the ink, Harry noted when he came out and took it from her, was iron gall, and the hand was Arrow's, and the tone was cordial. Harry, read it twice. My dear Mr. Potter, it has come to our attention that a personage of some distinction and of no small mystery has made his home lately with our good friends the Cullens. We have, as you will know, been much exercised by a rumor of a different, and we fear, more troubling kind. We shall descend shortly to resolve the rumor, and trust, with confidence, that in our descent the charge will be disproved by the very sight of its subject. The matter of yourself, however, is a separate and welcome surprise. We would esteem it a particular kindness and an act of old civility if you would consent to a private audience with me, 1 hour in a place of our mutual selection, on the morning before our formal meeting. The matter to be discussed is the possibility of a friendship between our house and yours. I would hold this hour in the highest honor. My brothers and the guard shall remain wholly apart, at a distance of such courtesy as you require. Your own companions shall, of course, be at any distance you wish. Please send word by any messenger you like. I shall, of course, respect the security of any site you choose. With sincere and anticipatory regard, Arrow, of the triumvirate Volterra. Harry laid the letter down and smiled. He wants a chat, he said. You won't go, Rosalie said flatly. I will, Harry, I will. He is offering a stage. I shall use the stage. I can set the conditions. I can set the hour. If I refuse, he will cast me as the refuser, and he will tell the field that he offered friendship and I spat on it. If I accept, he will be unable to cast me as anything other than a gentleman, and he will be, I believe, slightly unnerved by a gentleman, because his ordinary opponent does not hold doors open and say please. He'll read your thoughts the instant he touches you. He will not touch me. He'll ask. I shall decline. You'll offend him, mildly, Harry. He can lift a man off the ground with his mind. No, he can't. What? He can read a man with his touch. That is a different gift. Come, you are all projecting your respect onto him. He has cultivated that projection with considerable skill, but his gift has a specific shape and I am already larger than it. Don't worry, I won't take the gift lightly. Harry, I am not. Rosalie stopped. She looked at him. I am not worried about you being stupid. Oh? I am worried about him being stupid. Ah, Harry, Rose, I won't lose my temper, I promise, she grunted. She left the porch. He wrote his reply in his own hand on the back of the same vellum. He used a pen, not a quill, and he kept the hand simple and pleasant. He named the place a stand of firs on the ridge above the cottage, 1/2 mile from the field, 1/2 mile from the house, neutral on both counts, and the hour, the dawn of the second day from now, and he said yes, he did not send the raven. He sent Felix, who had been waiting politely in the forest at the same distance he had kept since Jane's visit. Harry walked to the tree line with the envelope in hand. Mr. Felix, he said. The giant stepped out silent. Would you be kind enough to take this to your master? I gather you know the route. Felix looked at him with dark crimson eyes. He took the envelope. He did not bow. He did not smile. He gave, however, a small nod that was, in its own way, an entire conversation. Master Potter. Sir, Felix was gone. The next 24 hours passed slowly because everybody in the Cullen house was bad at waiting. Alice paced and Jasper made her sit down, and then Jasper paced. Emmett, unable to fight anyone, built a snow fort in the front yard and demolished it an hour later to keep his hands busy. Benjamin taught Renesmee how to hold a small flame above her palm, and Tia scolded Benjamin, and Renesmee, who was already speaking in small, careful sentences at a month old, asked for the flame to come back. Carlyle read. Esme cooked, although she had no one to cook for. Stefan and Vladimir, who had decided that they liked Harry, played a long chess game on the porch with a board they had produced out of nowhere and very small pieces carved, Harry suspected, from bone. At dawn of the appointed day, Harry walked up the ridge alone. He had refused an escort. He had accepted, at his sister Alice's insistence, a charmed pebble in his pocket that would make her able to find him no matter what happened. He had refused any other thing. He had been very calm when he refused. He had kissed Esme on the cheek as he left because Esme had asked him to, and because he was, in fact, happier to kiss her than to not. He reached the stand of furs at the appointed hour. He was alone. Arrow came alone. It was a courtesy Harry had not expected. The Volturi protocol would have allowed for a single attendant, but Arrow was, Harry had come to suspect, a better actor than he was a master. He chose the shape of an audience that most disarmed his interlocutor. For Harry, he had chosen the shape of an old friend of his grandmother come to visit, in a heavy traveling cloak, in hair that had been black 1,000 years before, and was now very black in a way that said it had been black 1,000 years before. In eyes that had the milk of age across the red and were, for all that, very alive. "Mr. Potter," Arrow said from 8 paces away. "Master Arrow, how young you are." "I was." Arrow laughed. It was a delighted, light laugh. "I suppose you were. May we walk?" "We may." They walked among the trees. Arrow's boots were silent on the pine needles. Harry's crunched a little because Harry was a living man and the snow on the needles was fresh. Arrow did not offer a hand. "I will not," Arrow said, preempting Harry's defense, "impose upon you the touch by which I gather my thoughts. I know you would decline. I know also that you would tell me so politely, I wish to spare us both the dance. Let our conversation be, instead, the instrument. Thank you. May I say, Mr. Potter, that you are not at all what I had been led to imagine. Our files on wizards, which go back modestly to the 10th century, describe persons of very great and very dangerous vanity. You do not carry yourself vainly. I had expected a Grindelwald. I find I believe in Albus. Professor Dumbledore was my headmaster. I know. I corresponded with him briefly in the middle of the last century. He was very kind to me. He declined also my invitation." He smiled wryly. "It seems to be a habit of his line." "He taught me many habits, sir, including discretion. They walked. The trees above were heavy with snow. A small, sudden fall of it dusted Harry's hair. Arrow's hood took a share, and he shook it off. "I am going to be very honest with you, Mr. Potter, because I believe that honesty in this hour will be rarer and therefore more persuasive than charm. I am grateful for the choice. Our institution has had, for 2,500 years, 3 central preoccupations: the preservation of our secret, the punishment of its violators, and the refinement of ourselves. The first 2 we have performed with industry. The third, which is the only one that interests me personally, we have performed unevenly. We have gathered a guard of exceptional capacities, we have built a library that would humble Alexandria, and we have, in the last 3 centuries, developed an extremely unfortunate reputation as tyrants. You are not supposed to agree so readily. I am sorry. I find, Master Arrow, that I agree readily with truth. It saves time." Arrow laughed again. "I am going to like you, I warn you. I shall like you in spite of myself. Mr. Potter, here is my offer. I will withdraw the charge against Renesmee Cullen. I have already, in fact, been persuaded by witnesses whom I trust that she is not an immortal child. The Romanians I cannot speak to, but I shall not enforce against the Cullens a charge that I no longer believe. This I shall do regardless of your answer to the rest of this conversation, because it is right, and because I prefer to be right when I can. Second, I will guarantee the Cullens' peace. They have been, for some time, a thorn to me, because their existence is inconvenient to the doctrines by which my brothers prefer to govern. I will speak to my brothers. I will impose the guarantee. I have the political capital to impose it. I shall, for your sake, spend it. Third, I will welcome you into the library of Volterra as a scholar. You may come as often as you wish. You may take books. You may read the originals. You may correspond with the archivists. You shall have, in short, what I offered Albus and what Albus, to my sorrow, declined. And fourth, and this is the offer from which the previous three derive and which I ask you to consider, I wish you to take a chair among my counselors. Not the guard. The guard is a uniformed thing, and you would be unsuited to it. A counselor, a fourth voice, not fourth in rank, but fourth in existence in the chamber of the wives and the brothers. I do not ask for your fealty, I ask for your conversation. You will age, I am told, slowly. I have time, I do not need you tomorrow. I ask only that, in the 200 years that it will take you to begin to age as your heart requires, you spend some portion of those years with me. Arrow stopped. He faced Harry. I do not propose this to take you from your friends. I propose it because you are the most interesting thing to have come to my attention in my 4th century. I propose it because, to my surprise, I find that I would be a less tyrannical master with a counselor like you in my chamber. I propose it because you, having survived what you have survived, will be useful to me, and because I, having seen what I have seen, will, I believe, be useful to you. Harry stopped as well. He looked at Arrow. He did not answer at once. Master Arrow, he said at last. Thank you for the courtesy of the offer. I am, in fact, moved by it. I want you to know that I am moved. I am also going to decline it. The library I will come to. Thank you. I will come in a year when the present matter is settled, and I will come as a guest, and I will keep whatever covenants your archivists require. I shall not take books away from Volterra. Your books are Volterra's and should remain hers. I shall read them there, gratefully. The guarantee I accept, and I hold you to it. I think you will hold it. The chair I cannot take. I am young. I have been old before my age, and I was old while I was too young, and I have had enough of old things sitting in old rooms telling other old things what to do. I am learning, Master Arrow, how to be young. I am learning among people who love me and who have been patient with me and who have taught me this last month that I may sit in a kitchen and drink tea without being at the center of a catastrophe. I will not leave that kitchen to sit at your table. I mean no offense, I mean a great deal of respect. But I would be in your chamber an unhappy man, and I have resolved to not be, again, an unhappy man on behalf of anyone else's idea of the weight I ought to carry. You asked for conversation. I offer it. I will come to Volterra. I will write to you. I will visit you, perhaps once in a decade, in your library, and we will sit and we will talk as two friends. I offer you friendship, which you did not ask for, and which you may value less than the counselor's chair, but which I value a great deal. Arrow listened to him with the attention of a man who had, for 1,000 years, been paid for his attention and who, in this hour, was giving it freely. Mr. Potter, he said, Sir, I will consider. Thank you. I would point out that my brothers will not consider. Caius will not. Marcus will not care. If I return without you, I will return as a man who has failed. I will not shoot the messenger because the messenger is myself. But I will return to a chamber in which I have less capital than I had when I left it, and my ability to deliver the guarantee I have offered you will be correspondingly less. I will honor it, however. I tell you that I will. I believe you. You should not. I do. Arrow smiled, and the smile was not cordial. It was sorrowful. Mr. Potter, he said, you have given me a kind answer. I would ask in return that you be prepared. Caius will not be kind. He has, for some decades now, been outpacing me in our chamber. He will read your answer as my weakness. He will demand the formal meeting tomorrow anyway. He will press. He will look for an excuse. You will be provoked. Jane will be ordered to provoke you. The child will be used as a provocation. I say this so that you may prepare. I cannot stop it. I can promise you only that when the blows fall, I shall be slow to join them. Master Arrow, Mr. Potter, come back from it if you can. I beg your pardon, come back from it. Come back from who you have had to become in your chamber over the centuries. There is still time. Arrow was quiet for a long moment. He looked in that moment like an old man. You are, he said, the first person in 400 years to say so to me. I am sorry for that. I am too. Master Arrow, Mr. Potter, they inclined their heads to each other. Arrow drew his cloak a little tighter across his shoulders, and then he turned and walked up the ridge into the trees and was gone. Harry stood a while longer among the firs. He thought about what had just happened. He thought about Arrow's face in the last moment, about the long hollow behind the eyes of an immortal whose friends had been either made or murdered. He thought about what Caius would do with Arrow's failure. He thought longest about how tired Arrow had looked. It was not a thing Arrow had tried to hide. Then Harry went down the ridge to the cottage, and in the cottage he opened the bottom of his pack and took out the Elder Wand, because tomorrow in the clearing he would need it. He did not mean to use it as a weapon. He meant, if it came to it, to use it as a bridge into the gift of a brother who had made himself a tyrant, a bridge across which, at the last possible moment, a man might be invited to walk back. He laid the Elder Wand on the kitchen table. He laid his own holly beside it. He laid the stone on top of them. He sat at the table and looked at the three things for a long time, then he got up. He made tea. He walked down to the Cullen house. He ate dinner with his family. He did not tell them yet about the invitation to walk back. They would not have understood it. He did not understand it entirely himself, but the shape of it had arrived in his mind in the firs, and he meant to follow it into the morning. Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. The clearing they came in a file in black across the snow. It was an old theater, the arrival of the Volturi. 28 figures moving in perfect cohesion, as though the column were a single body with many legs. At the head were Arrow and Caius. Marcus drifted a half-pace behind them, his eyes on the sky, present only because his presence was required. The wives, Sulpicia and Athenodora, who had not left Volterra in 500 years, whose attendance signaled precisely the importance of the matter, walked behind the three brothers in matched robes of Tyrian purple. Behind them, Felix and Demetri. Behind them, Jane and Alec, Jane's face like a small mask of alabaster. Behind them, the guard in 4 ranks, Chelsea and Corin and Afton and Renata and the rest, until the tail of the column touched the tree line and the tree line held. Across the clearing stood the Cullens. Harry had placed them carefully. Carlisle at the center, with Esme at his elbow. Edward to Carlisle's right, Bella at Edward's shoulder, Renesmee in Bella's arms, because Renesmee, Harry had said, must be seen plainly and openly by every eye, because the first charge that they had come to press depended on her being hidden. On Carlisle's left, Alice and Jasper, Rosalie and Emmett. In a second arc, at her respectful distance, the witnesses. The Denali, the Amazons, the Egyptians, the Irish, the Romanians, spaced as Harry had spaced them, so that no one faction stood alone and no one faction stood too close. At the back of the field, in loose formation, the wolves. 17 of them, because Cullen was too young and had been left in the care of the council. Jacob at the front in human form, because Jacob had refused to wolf out in the presence of the girl. Harry had not argued. Jacob's refusal had been, in its own way, a demonstration he had wanted the Vulturi to see. Harry stood a half-pace in front of Carlisle. He wore a dark coat and boots and a gray scarf that Esme had wrapped around his neck that morning, saying with her eyes that she did not care if he needed one and that he would be wearing it anyway. His hands were in his pockets. His wand, the holly, was up his sleeve. The stone was in his left pocket. The cloak was a lining in his coat. The Elder Wand was in his right boot, not because he wanted to draw from the boot, but because he had found, over the years, that an object in a boot had a settling effect. It reminded him that he was armed in the last place he would reach, and that he therefore did not need to reach friends. Carlisle said as the column came to a stop 30 paces off. "Welcome, you have," said Caius, without any welcome, "a child. We have. She is immortal. She is not. The charge has been laid. The charge is wrong. Then we shall see, we shall." Arrow stepped forward. He held up his hands, the gesture of a man calling a pause at a duel, and his voice, when it came, was the voice Harry had heard in the firs, old, warm, wry. If there had been a private negotiation between them, Arrow did not betray it. His eyes passed over Harry politely and moved on. "Cousin Carlisle," Arrow said, "we have been misinformed. You have. I should like to see the child. Bella did not flinch. Edward did not flinch. Harry had made this exchange clear to everyone. When Arrow asks, Bella walks forward. Bella will not go alone. Edward will walk with her. Harry will walk with them. They walked. Arrow's eyes went from the child to the parents and back. His face, for a moment, was the face of a man looking at something so rare that he could not quite fit it into his accustomed categories. She is half of each of you, he said wonderingly. She is. Edward said, Will you permit my hand? On the child, no. On me, I will answer for myself. Your wife will speak for herself. I speak for myself, Bella said, steady in her new clear voice. You may place your hand on my wrist. You may read what I will show you. You will not touch my daughter. Arrow bowed because the terms were fair. He touched Bella's wrist. He closed his eyes for a long minute. No one spoke. When Arrow opened his eyes again, they were wet at the edges, which Harry had not seen in a vampire before and would not see again. A marvel. Arrow said, A marvel. She grows, she ages, she learns. She will one day stop growing when her body has finished. She will not, in any sense I can measure, be immortal. She is a new thing. Forgive me, I am an old man and I have seen so few new things. Then withdraw the charge. Edward said, I withdraw it, Arrow said, without hesitation. He turned his head toward his brother. Caius, we have been misinformed. A pity, Caius said. There was a silence. Brother, Arrow said. A pity, Caius repeated, that we came all this way for a misinformation. A pity that the Romanian wretches yonder are still standing. A pity that the Cullens have built a coven so large it rivals our own. A pity that there are wolves in the tree line. A pity that we stand among the woods of a foreign country, called to settle a lie. I do not intend to leave without settling something, brother. I hope for your sake you have another purpose. Arrow turned his head. His hand, very small, twitched at his side. It was, Harry saw, the gesture of a man who would have liked to take his brother by the elbow and walk him into a quiet room and had, in that moment, remembered that his brother had outgrown him and that there was no quiet room to walk him into. Caius, Arrow said, is within his rights. Yes. Caius said, I am. He stepped forward past his brother. I make a second charge, Caius said. The charge is witchcraft. There is, among the Cullens' guests, a wizard. The charge is that he is an unregistered entity in our jurisdiction, among covens of our jurisdiction, in a residence of our jurisdiction, without our sanction. The charge is that he has killed a vampire of the Carpathian coven and shown no remorse for the killing. The charge is that he is, by his very presence, a danger to our secret. That is 3 charges, Emmett muttered. Emmett, Rosalie murmured. I just think, Emmett said. Harry stepped forward. I am, he said, the subject of the charges. I will answer them. He was not loud. He did not need to be. I am, as Caius says, a wizard. I have been, for the most part, not in anyone's jurisdiction. I am a guest of the Cullens. I killed a member of the Carpathian coven who had been feeding on children and who had been sent on a mission against me by the remnants of that coven. I regret the killing. I do not regret the judgment that led to it. I have agreed with Master Arrow that I shall observe your statute for as long as I reside here. I am, as well as you are, an enemy of those who violate it. I am, in short, the least of Caius's concerns, and I am happy to demonstrate that I am not a threat to any of you by withdrawing from the contest here today. I shall not fight. I offer you my word. The word of a wizard, said Caius, is worth a farthing in my estimation. A pity. You will be detained. I will not. Jane Volturi looked at Harry and did what she did. Harry, who had been ready for it, lifted his hand, a very small gesture, the lifting of 3 fingers at his waist, and absorbed the pain as he had done on the road. His face did not move. Jane tried again with the full weight of her 5 centuries. Nothing. She tried again, a 3rd time, and the hair at her temples stirred because she was, for the first time in her long life, putting the whole of her weight behind a blow that had no purchase. Caius, Arrow said very quietly. My dear brother? Alec, Caius said. Alec Volturi, whose gift was the reverse of Jane's, a blanketing numbness, a fog that deprived its victims of sense, lifted his head, and a gray miasma rolled out from him like a fog bank off a cold lake across the snow toward the Cullens. Harry raised his hand at the wrist. It is difficult to describe what he did. The closest analog a human eye could have given the moment was this. The fog, which had been moving across the snow with smooth intent, met a line of air that had, without visible reason, become not air. The fog piled against the line of air. The fog curled back on itself and found that it could not flank the line. The fog slowed and stopped and lay there, 30 paces from the Cullens, curdled, unable to advance. "That," said Benjamin softly behind Harry, "is a very elegant trick. Thank you." Harry said. Alec tried harder. The fog thickened. The line of air held. Alec, like Jane, began to sweat in the way vampires sweat, which is not with moisture but with a certain brittle shine along the brow. "Chelsea," Caius said. Chelsea Volturi, whose gift was the manipulation of bonds, turned her mild eyes on the Cullens and began. It was a quiet, domestic gift, a gift that felt to the victim like a small, reasonable thought, to whisper against the ties between Carlyle and Esme, between Edward and Bella. Between Alice and Jasper, she failed. She failed because, as a small exertion later revealed, whenever Chelsea reached toward a bond in the Cullen line, her gift met, instead of the bond, a quiet, bright circle that surrounded the Cullens entirely. The circle was Harry. The circle had been Harry for 3 days. The circle would stay for as long as Harry stood. Chelsea, puzzled, looked at her master. "Brother," Arrow said to Caius gently, "we are being embarrassed." "Then let us not be embarrassed," Caius said, and a small, terrible light came into his eye. "Let us resolve this as kings." He turned to the field. He said loud, "I propose a duel, the wizard against Jane and Alec. Jane and Alec to use their gifts and their teeth without reserve. The wizard to use what he has. If the wizard wins, we withdraw with honor and the Cullens shall have their peace. If Jane and Alec win, the wizard is ours and the Cullens shall, in good faith, yield him." "I accept," Harry said before the Cullens could object. "Harry," Edward hissed. "Brother." Harry did not turn his head. "I accept. It is a fair trade. A duel ends this without the field becoming a slaughter. Your witnesses have come to witness. Let them witness." Harry, Edward, after a moment, stepped back. "There is," Harry said, turning to face Caius, "a condition." "A condition?" "Yes, and that is, if I win, and I mean to, Jane and Alec shall live. I will not take them from you. They are your tools. You may need them. I will bind their gifts for an afternoon. I will not destroy them." "That is no condition against you," Caius said. "That is a condition against them. Done. And second, if in the course of the duel Master Arrow steps in for any reason on any pretext, Master Arrow shall be the fourth fighter, not a moderator, and he shall fight me on my terms." Arrow's eyes widened very slightly. "Those are my terms," Harry said. "Take them or do not." Caius smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Taken. There was a ripple in the clearing, a small rearrangement of bodies. The Cullens stepped back, the witnesses as one stepped further back. The wolves, at a nod from Jacob, flattened to the snow. Jane walked forward 6 paces. Alec, after a pause, followed her. They stopped together 20 paces from Harry. Harry slid his hand up his sleeve and drew his holly. He did not draw the elder wand. "Harry," Alice said behind him, a small voice. "Yes, she will try to kill you. I know. He will try. I know. Be careful, Alice." "I have been in duels before." He took 3 breaths. He settled his weight. He let the snow find the soles of his boots. He raised his wand. "When you are ready, Miss Vulturi," he said. Jane lifted her head. Alec lifted his. The 2 of them looked at him with old eyes that had, in their long lives, stared down sultans and cardinals and an emperor or 2. "Master Arrow," said Caius a little too quickly. "Count off." 3, said Arrow unhappily. 2, said Marcus, which surprised everyone. 1, said Caius before Arrow could. "Begin," said Arrow. Chapter 8 and Chapter 9. The duel, the instant the word "begin" left Arrow's mouth, 3 things happened at once. Jane flung pain across the snow with a force she had been saving for the eventuality of her own life. Alec flooded the gap with mist. And Harry, who had prepared for precisely these 2 moves, did neither of the things they expected. He did not shield. Shielding was passive, and Harry had decided on the walk up from the cottage that he would be active. He did not counter-strike. A counter-strike against Jane, as he had learned on the road, was a refusal, not a countering, and Jane would recover. No, he took 1 step forward, flicked his holly at the ground at his feet, and let the snow between him and his opponents wake up. The snow rose. It rose in a waist-high, white, translucent wall, not a wall of ice, though to the untrained eye it resembled ice, but a wall of living water held in suspension by a word in the Erse which had no exact translation but which had, for 1,000 years, been used by midwives and by smugglers alike, because a smuggler and a midwife both want a door that only they can open. The wall followed Harry like a cloak. It stood between him and the twins and softened Jane's pain into a warm, distant pressure and turned Alec's mist, as it reached the wall, into a thin, damp cloud that curled against the translucent face like breath against a window. "Cute," Jane spat. "Thank you." She came at him. She was a blur across the snow, and she struck the wall, and the wall did what living water does. It yielded and absorbed and held and, having absorbed her momentum, surrounded her. She was, for a full and appalling half-second, suspended in the wall like a bee in amber. Then the wall released her gently, because Harry did not want any of them injured, and she landed 15 paces from where she had struck, stumbled, recovered, and snarled. Harry said nothing. Alec was cleverer. He did not attack. He stood and thickened his mist, trying to find around the wall a direction in which it could travel. He found that the wall was a sphere around Harry, not a plane. He found that the wall moved with Harry. He could not flank it. He began to set a slower, steadier pressure, pushing with his gift against the entire surface of the sphere, seeking a seam. Harry, his holly still at his thigh, waited. He waited because he had a specific plan, and the plan required patience. Jane came again. She came from Harry's left flank, this time at full speed, trying to get around the wall. Harry turned, the wall turned with him, and Jane, hitting it again, slid around the curve and was again stopped. The wall, which had been taught to learn, added her energy to its own. Harry, smiling a little, spoke a single word. The Latin came out of his memory easily. The wall, infused with Jane's attacks, divided itself into 2 and then 4 and then 16 slow, drifting, fist-sized spheres, each of which orbited Harry at a small distance and each of which was now a coin in a pocket. "Oh," said Benjamin, who could appreciate elegance in water. Jane circled. She tried Alec in her mind. Harry saw the tiny, disciplined glance, and Alec tried to help. He pressed his mist harder. The spheres, spinning, absorbed the mist. Alec grew paler faster than he ought to have. "Brother," Alec said without turning his head to Jane, "I know." Harry very politely raised his wand. "I am going to take a shot now," he said, "so that this does not go on. Please do not take it personally." He flicked. A sphere broke off from his orbit, arced through the air, and struck Jane at the chest. It did not harm her. It wrapped her instead from throat to hip in a glassy band. The band, the coin in the pocket, the pain she had thrown at him, now returned, did not inflict pain. It carried at its core the memory of pain, and when it settled against her, the memory pressed itself very politely into her gift. Her gift for the next hour would not function. It would be present. She would be able to feel its absence. She would not be able to reach it. Harry had taught the memory how to sit on her ability the way a cat sits on a book. Jane gave a small, sharp cry, not of pain but of a different kind of loss. Harry turned and flicked again, and a second sphere arced through the air and wrapped Alec from throat to hip. His mist thinned. The seam he had been searching for thinned with it. Within a breath he had no gift to wield either. Alec stood a long moment. Then he lowered his head and said softly, "That was very good. You are gracious. You might as well finish us." "I am not going to finish you. I said I would not." "You may go back and stand with your master if you like, or you may stand where you are until the hour is out and your gifts return. Either is acceptable to me," Jane hissed. Alec turned his head and said, "Sister, it is done. Walk with me." She did not walk. She remained as though she could will her gift back into existence by sheer spite. Alec walked alone back to the Vulturi line. He passed, on the way, his master Arrow and bowed to him, which was not a gesture the guard often offered in public. Arrow received it with a very slight dip of the chin. "Caius," Arrow said, turning his head, "honor requires you to withdraw." "Honor does not," said Caius, "brother. He took no blood. He took their capacities for an hour. Then he did not win the duel. The duel was to the blood. It was not. It was, I set the terms. He agreed. He did not. He said, I mean to win, and he said, I will not destroy them. Those were the terms. The duel was to submission. He has submission. Brother, withdraw. Caius instead drew his sword. It was a thin, very old thing, no longer than a man's forearm. Harry had not known Caius carried a sword. Caius had apparently for centuries reserved the drawing of it for ceremonial occasions and for his own amusement. I challenge the wizard myself, Caius said, on my own behalf, on the honor of the guard. Will you accept, wizard? Harry. It was Carlyle. His voice, quiet, precise, pained, cut across the field. Harry, you do not have to. I know, Harry said, do not. Carlyle, he will not let it rest. He will insist. He will, if I do not accept, manufacture an insult against someone else of ours. I accept now while he is a single fool with a sword, and not when he is a room on fire around the child. Harry, doctor, I love you, let me. Carlyle, after a long, painful moment, bowed his head. Harry turned to Caius. Sir, I accept. The field tightened further. Caius came fast. He came with the technique of a Spartan who had in life killed 50 men and who had in undeath killed 1,000 more. His technique was good. It was the technique Harry had expected. Harry met it with his holly not as a wand but as a stick, flicking the blade offline twice before Caius settled his stance, and in the settling, Caius discovered that the wizard did not fence by the rules of any school he knew. Harry was not trying to hit Caius. He was trying to wear him out. He was reading the patterns of Caius's footwork and letting Caius set the rhythm and step out of it, a half beat out, each time Caius set a strike. He had learned this trick from an old dueler in Prague who had taught him by beating him silly for a month, and who had then, on the 31st day at the end of the lesson, bowed to him, because the wizard from England had for the first time been able to stand her down to a draw. Caius, for all his centuries, had not been taught the lesson because no one had ever lived long enough to teach him. He attacked 6 times. Harry evaded 5 and turned the 6th aside with a word that made the blade in mid-arc slow. Caius, startled, fell forward. Harry stepped into him, tapped him on the throat with the holly and said, "Sleep." Caius fell asleep into the snow. There was a single gasp across the field. "Do not be alarmed," Harry said. "He is not dead. He is, for the next 3 hours, asleep. He will wake in a bad temper. I recommend his attendants keep him in a padded room." Nobody answered for a long moment. Arrow at last began slowly to laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had been, for some time, waiting for something he could not quite articulate and had been given it. "Cousin Caius," Arrow said fondly at the body of his brother, "is going to be a very difficult houseguest for the next 3 hours. I'm sorry. Do not be." Harry exhaled. He was, he noticed, tired. He had not been tired in some time. Arrow stepped forward. "Mr. Potter," he said, "Master Arrow. You set a condition earlier that if I intervened I would fight you. I did not intervene." "No, sir, I wish to intervene." "Ah." "I wish to intervene because my brother, who has been outpacing me in our chamber for 30 years, has been made ridiculous, and because the guard is watching, and because if I do not close this matter with a personal act it will not close. I wish to intervene because my brother demanded a fight and lost one, and now, for the honor of Volterra, I must fight one. I understand. I would rather not, I know. Do you still accept the terms?" "I do." "On your terms," you said. "What are your terms?" "A single pass, no gift, no wand. No blade, hand to hand, one exchange. Whoever is on the ground at the end of the exchange yields. We part as friends." "I should have to yield at the end of the exchange, Mr. Potter." "That is the plan, sir." "Ah." Arrow turned his head. He looked at Marcus. Marcus, for the first time that Harry had seen, looked back with a faint gleam. Marcus nodded once. "I accept," Arrow said. They walked toward each other. Harry was slower because he was human. Arrow could have closed in a fraction of a second. He did not. He walked at Harry's pace. When they were a pace apart, they stopped. Harry had planned a great deal of this. He had planned the walls of water. He had planned the orbiting spheres. He had planned the counterbindings on Jane and Alec. He had even planned, if it came to it, a particular spell he would have cast at Caius. A small, neat, old spell called the Keep, which meant what it said. He had not planned for the thing he now meant to do, and he had not planned for it because he had not known, until a day ago in a stand of furs, that he was the kind of man who would do it. He was pleased that he was. He took off his coat. He laid it in the snow. Inside it, invisible until he uncased it, was the elder wand in his right boot and the stone in his pocket and the cloak, gleaming like a spider's web, woven into the silk lining of the coat. He did not pick any of them up. He unwrapped the invisibility cloak from the lining. The cloak came off the silk with a whisper. Harry held it up, a banner of gray not-there-ness, and then folded it. He laid it in Arrow's hand. Arrow's face did not move. He looked, for the first time in 1,000 years, almost young. "Master Arrow, this is a gift, a piece of an old thing. It is not mine to lend forever, but it is in your hands now. Give it to Marcus if you like. Give it to a scholar of your library. Wrap the bones of a friend of yours in it when, in time, you choose to bury them. It is yours." Arrow looked down at the cloak. "Mr. Potter, sir. You understand what you are offering? Yes, you do not know me. I know you. You are a tired man, sir. I have been tired. I gave my tiredness away once, and I was, in the giving of it, restored. I offer you the first stone of that exchange. The cloak is not for you to keep. It is for you to remember that somebody once thought you could be the man you were before you became what you are." The single exchange Harry had asked for did not, in the end, involve a single blow. It involved, instead, a very small nod. Arrow bowed very slightly. He did not fall. He did not, in the technical sense, yield. He simply looked at Harry for a very long moment, and then he said, audibly, to the field, to his brothers, to his guard, "The duel is ended. I concede. The Cullens have their peace." There was a gasp. Caius in the snow slept on because his attendants had not yet dared to lift him. "Sulpicia," Arrow said to his wife softly. "Athenodora, take my brother home. Tell him when he wakes that I said the word. Tell him I will speak with him in Volterra. Husband, go." Arrow tucked the cloak into his sleeve. He turned. He walked 4 paces. He stopped. "Mr. Potter, sir, may I call you brother?" "You may," Harry said. "I will hold you to it." "So will I. Go home, Master Arrow." "I am going." Arrow went. The guard gathered around their 3 masters and around Jane, who was led, unsteady on her feet, by her twin. They did not look at the Cullens. They did not look at Harry. They went as they had come, a black column across the snow, and in the column, shoulders ahead of the rest, Arrow walked with the light step of a man who had, quite unexpectedly, been permitted to leave a room he had been afraid to leave for 1,000 years. When they were gone, Marcus alone remained. He looked at Harry. "Young man," Marcus said, "sir, I have not spoken in 300 years. I speak now. Thank you. You are welcome." "My wife," Marcus said, "died in 1260 at my own hand, an accident, and I have, since that hour, served my brother because I did not wish to serve anyone, and he filled the gap my did-I'm left. He has not been, I think, a good guide. I think today he may be a better one. I ask to be released of my office. I ask to walk alone for a time. That is for you to ask, sir. I cannot grant it. I ask you to witness that I have asked. I witness. Thank you." Marcus walked across the snow in the direction opposite to the one the guard had taken. He did not look back. By sunset he would be, Harry understood, a small, thinning shadow in the tree line, and by the end of the week he would be in Mongolia, and by the end of the year he would be in a monastery in Bhutan or not. Where Marcus went would be Marcus's business. Harry let him go. Harry turned. He picked up his coat. He put it back on. It was lighter without the cloak in the lining. He walked slowly toward the Cullens. Carlyle was the first to reach him. He put his hand on Harry's shoulder and kept it there. "My son, father, come home." "Yes." Esme took his other arm. Alice, who had been biting her lip for 3 hours, threw her arms around his waist. Emmett, who had not known what to do with himself, clapped him on the back and nearly knocked him over. Bella, with Renesmee in her arms, touched his cheek. Rosalie, from a half-pace away, rolled her eyes and then, quietly, laid her head on his shoulder for a second. Jasper, at the end, offered his hand. Harry took it. "Major," Harry said. "Brother?" "Yes." They walked back to the house in a body, together. The witnesses behind them, the wolves at the tree line, the snow, at last, thinning as the sun found a gap in the clouds and put a finger on the clearing in a way that even the most cynical of them was prepared in that hour to call benevolent. Chapter 9 and Chapter 10. What remains spring in Forks did not announce itself. It arrived the way a cautious neighbor lets himself in through the back door. After 2 weeks, the snow was gone from the fields. After 3, the rivers had thawed. After 4, the alders by the river road had their first green. After 5, the thrushes had found the old apple tree beside Bill Ellison's cottage and were making, in the mornings, a kind of cheerful weather of their own. Harry moved out of his cottage and into the Cullen house on the 14th of March. He did not move in because anybody asked him to. Esme simply, on the 13th, put a pair of his books on the bedside table of the room at the end of the east hall and took him by the elbow on the 14th and led him there and left him to understand what had been decided for him. He did understand. He did not object. The witnesses dispersed slowly. The Denali stayed a week and left a promise. The Amazons went home in a body with a quiet courtesy that Harry liked very much. The Egyptians left handwritten notes. Benjamin, on his last morning, conjured a small, tame flame above Renesmee's palm, showed her how to hold it, and made her promise to call him if she ever wanted to learn more. She promised. He left laughing. The Irish were still there at the end of the month. Siobhan had declared herself, somehow, the witness in residence, and none of the Cullens had the heart to ask her to go. She went, finally, in the middle of April, with kisses and a bottle of something distilled on her family's farm that Carlyle accepted with the solemnity of a man receiving a sacrament. The Romanians had stayed the longest. Stefan and Vladimir had taken a fondness to the Cullen porch, to Emmett, to chess, and, in an unlikely development, to Renesmee, who had sat between them on the couch one afternoon and asked a question about Wallachia that had started a lecture which lasted 6 hours. When at last they had left, they had done so with the kind of formal farewell that suggested they might come back within the year. "They will come back," Alice said, amused. "I hope so," said Esme, who had found, to her own astonishment, that she had grown fond of the Romanians. "Not every month." "No, but often." Jacob was at the Cullen house most days. Renesmee grew at a rate that would have frightened anyone who had not been warned, and Jacob, whose imprinting meant that he was, Harry had confirmed it, the most stable fixed point in the child's small universe, was present for every inch. He had stopped openly disliking Harry in the 3rd week of February and had, without announcement, started going to Harry with his questions about Renesmee in the 4th. Harry answered them as a brother answers questions for a brother. The two of them had, by the end of March, achieved a working partnership that Bella and Edward, exchanging looks across the kitchen, agreed not to comment upon because commentary would break the spell. Arrow wrote. He wrote the first letter 3 days after the duel. The letter arrived by ordinary airmail. It was short and said, "My dear Harry, I am home. My brother is awake. He is, as you predicted, in a bad temper. I have reinstated what I had forgotten how to reinstate. The cloak is folded in a small box in my library. Marcus writes me from Montana, which pleases me greatly. He did not go west for me. He went because the trees there are a kind he has been meaning to see. The guard has stopped sitting upright when I enter a room. I find I am not unhappy to have been made human again for a moment. Come when you will." Arrow, Harry wrote back. He sent a raven as a joke because Arrow had sent a raven the first time. The raven did not know the way to Volturi and got lost. 10 days later, a bemused farmer in Belgium wrote Harry through an address his owl had taken, and which Harry had not intended for anyone to have, and said, "Sir, your bird has eaten half of my pigeon feed, and I shall keep him, if you please, because he is charming, and feed him for you." Harry wrote the farmer a thank-you note and a small check. The raven, whose name, the farmer informed Harry, was now Bernard, settled in Belgium. The farmer wrote once a month. Harry replied once a month. It became, in its own way, a new small tradition. On the morning of the 1st of May, Harry went down to the river by himself. He went without his wand, which he had been practicing going without more and more often. He sat on the bank. He drank tea from a thermos. He watched the water, and he listened to the finches in the alders. He did not consciously bring out the stone. It was in his pocket, and his fingers had, without asking him, turned it 3 times. The shade that sat beside him after a moment was Albus Dumbledore's. "Harry, Professor, good morning. Good morning." They sat a while, not talking, because a man who has been Harry's headmaster for 7 years does not need to start a conversation. "You have," Dumbledore said at last, "done a remarkable thing. I have done, Harry said, what I could. You have done more than that. You were once a boy who could not trust himself to love a family because everyone he loved or who claimed him died. You are today a man who has very carefully chosen a family and who has very carefully not hidden from them. You have done a remarkable thing. Also, you have given away the cloak. I have. You did not ask me. You would have said, "Are you sure, my boy?" I would have, and you would have said, I would have said, "Yes, Professor." And I should have bowed to your wisdom. I bow to it now. Thank you, Harry. Are you happy? Harry considered. I am, he said. I have not been. I am. It startles me. It would. Tell me. I wake in the morning and I know who I am. I drink tea at the same table as a doctor who has become my father. I argue with a woman who is the closest thing to a sister I have ever had. I spar with a brother who throws a poor punch and a brother who reads me so well that we have dispensed with most dialogue. I am taught music by a mother who does not mind if I cannot sing. I have a small niece who, at the moment, thinks my hair is particularly fascinating. I love them, sir, in a way that feels deeply, deeply ordinary. I did not know that the feeling would be so ordinary. It is the best of feelings. Yes. Are you going to be the boy who lived, Harry? No, sir. Are you going to be the master of death? No, sir. What are you going to be? Harry looked at the river. I am going to be Harry, he said, and I am going to be a Cullen, and I am going to rest. Excellent, said Dumbledore, and his face split into the smile that Harry had more than he had allowed himself to know missed. Excellent, my dear boy. That is the best news I have had in a long while. Thank you for teaching me. Thank you for teaching me, Harry. Sir, one last thing. Yes, you may come back to the old country, you know. You are welcome. You have friends there. You do not have to stay away forever. I will come back in time, not yet. Not yet. I only wanted you to know. Some of them will be proud of you when they see you next. It might be worth the trip. I will make the trip. Good. Dumbledore smiled once more, a smaller and more private smile, and then, as shades do, he was not there any more. The stone in Harry's pocket was warm. He sat for a while longer. The thrushes continued. The river continued. A small gray heron, prim as a spinster, walked the opposite bank and disappeared into the reeds. He folded the thermos shut and walked up to the house. Esme was on the porch. There you are, she said, as though he had been lost for a week. Come in, the kettle is on. Yes. Emmett has the chessboard set up for you. Tell him I'm coming. Alice wants your opinion on a dress she made for Renesmee. Yes. Rosalie has a question about a book she's reading. Yes. Carlyle wants to know if you have read his paper on reflexive autoimmunity. I have notes. Edward is at the piano. I hear him. Bella is in the garden with Renesmee. Jacob on the lawn. Jasper reading. The Romanians, they called. They want to come for Thursday. Say yes. I did. Thank you. Come in. Esme said again and took his elbow and kissed him on the cheek and took him in. He went. He drank the tea. He played Emmett at chess and lost one match and won one and lost one. He gave his opinion on Alice's dress. It was excellent. He said so. Alice, who did not require the opinion, received it graciously. He read 3 pages of Carlyle's paper aloud with Carlyle so that Carlyle could hear how it sounded. He sat on the bench of the piano with Edward, and the two of them worked for an hour on a simple duet that Harry could, with his rudimentary skills, manage without mangling. Bella waved to him from the garden, and Renesmee, sitting on the grass with Jacob, showed Harry by the quick small flash of her hand on Harry's cheek the memory of the morning's breakfast which had delighted her. He laughed. In the evening they all sat down in the living room. Carlyle lit the fire because the house liked a fire even when the house did not need one. Esme put on, softly, the low end of a piece of music Harry had not heard, something quiet and French. Rosalie, on the couch, stretched out her feet and laid them with no ceremony across Harry's lap. Move them? No, Rose, no, fine. He turned the page of the book he had been pretending to read. He caught Carlyle's eye. Carlyle smiled. Alice on the rug said, without looking up from her sketchbook, I can see him now, a little at a time, only when he isn't paying attention. He's been paying less attention lately. Don't jinx it, Emmett said. I'm not jinxing, I'm reporting. He has a nerve. Emmett, Harry, I am talking about you. Harry has a nerve. Thank you, Emmett, don't mention it. Renesmee, who had been given permission to stay up 10 minutes past her bedtime. She was, chronologically, 3 months old. By size and mind, 5, made a small sleepy noise in Bella's arms and laid her hand, as she often did at the end of the day, on her father's cheek. She showed him the whole day. The day included, near the end, a frame of Harry teaching her how to tell a tawny owl from a barn owl, because a letter had come in the mail that morning by an owl that had not been Bernard from an old friend in Scotland. Harry, sitting on the couch with Rosalie's ankles on his knees, looked up, caught Edward watching him through Renesmee's gift, and said, "Owl from Hogwarts, McGonagall. She wants me to come in the autumn and guest teach a fortnight." I said yes, I'll go in October. October, said Esme. 2 weeks. Not more? Good. I'll bring her back a stone from Forks. Bring her a jar of my jam, said Esme. A Scotch pine can have all the stones it likes. A decent apple jam it cannot grow. Yes, ma'am. Bella kissed Renesmee's hair. Renesmee, at last, closed her eyes. Bella looked at Harry across the room, and in her glance was the end of a long promise she had made, a month and a week ago, to trust a stranger with her body and her daughter, and the settled knowledge that the stranger had been, all along, a brother. Harry held her eyes and lifted his teacup, a very small salute. She lifted Renesmee's small hand and waved it solemnly in reply. Outside, in the dusk, the rain that Harry had walked in on his first evening in Forks began, politely, to come down again over the Cullen house. It was not a cold rain. It was the kind of rain that, in Forks, watered the moss and the alders and the wide old trees, and which, if you were new to the rain, you might at first mistake for gloom, and which, if you stayed long enough, you came to understand for the living thing it was, a patient mothering, inexhaustible blessing by which the forest was fed. In the living room, behind a window slightly fogged with the warmth of a fire, 7 vampires and a young wizard and a werewolf boy asleep on the rug, and a small, half-vampire girl dreaming against her mother's collarbone did what families do in the evenings, which is to be together without particularly noticing that they are. Harry set down his teacup. He closed his book. He looked around the room. He was, he realized, without alarm, without sorrow, without any grief for the boy he had been home.